Well, ladies and gentlemen, I pray to God that this Wi-Fi is good enough for us to live stream. We are currently in a hotel. If the Wi-Fi is bad, you need to let me know, and I will try to switch it to a hotspot on my phone. But we will see. For now, we are running it like this. Let me get my phone up and see how it's looking. Doesn't look too shabby. But yeah, bad news. You have no Kenneth Walker. So if you have Zach Charbonnet, I guess it's great for you. You start Zach Charbonnet. Charbonnet should be a very exciting play. I immediately move Zach Charbonnet. I think it's RB11 or RB12 in our rankings this week. So I think Charbonnet is a running back one. And yeah, I mean, let me go ahead and just show you where we ranked him. Maybe that helps you out a little bit more than me just saying, oh, he's a running back one. So obviously, if you are a member of flockfantasy.com, you can just go over anytime you want to the rankings page. I try to keep my rankings updated the best that I can. Last week was a little tough because it was Thanksgiving and I was traveling. Here we're traveling again. We have a big Underdog event that we're at, which obviously, shout out Underdog Fantasy. Thank you for the invite. But just hit sort by Mason Dodd. And then you can go through and you can see that I have Zach Charbonnet ranked at RB12 this week in my rankings. So if you have Charbonnet, I'd highly recommend that you get him in here, ladies and gentlemen. Let me see if there are any other updates that we have injury-wise. I don't think that there are. At least last I saw, I mean, really the only additional news that we had was, oh, okay, well, they're not shutting down Malik Neighbors for this season. Oh, okay, they're not shutting down Breece Hall for the season. But in terms of giving us some clarity on what we have this week, I don't really see anything. Yeah, Breece Hall could return week 15. Jets are going to draft another quarterback. Who cares? Ashetti says the Giants are not planning to shut down Malik Neighbors for the season, but they don't even freaking tell us Malik Neighbors is going to play this week. Okay, can we see if there's any clarity under this? Yeah, I don't know. Neighbors still a game time decision. Keon Coleman's game time decision. Not playing Keon regardless. Dalton Kincaid not expected to play week 14. Raheem Mostert not expected to play week 14 either. So honestly, Jalen Wright may be a very interesting waiver wire pickup. And I'm actually going to run to the waiver wire of my league. And I'm going to see if Jalen Wright is available. He's probably not, but if he is, I'm grabbing this dude. Yeah, Jalen Wright is available in my league. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to pick him up. I'm going to drop the Texans defense. Or do I even have the Texans defense to drop? No, I'm going to drop Jaleel McLaughlin. Yeah, and we'll pick up Jalen Wright. Because now, if you do have Mostert banged up, if you were to get an injury to Achane, Wright does look like he is straight up the dude. So let's get him. And Elad McConkey is still a game time decision as well. We don't have any clarity on that front. Kenneth Walker is out week 14. And then I guess they're saying Malik Neighbors is going to be in a limited role regardless. With how it stands right now, I had Malik Neighbors ranked at about wide receiver 15 in our rankings. But honestly, if they're telling us that Malik Neighbors could play in a limited role, I'm going to move Neighbors down even a little bit more just because best case scenario, he's still in a garbage offense, right? So I'd probably start Judy. I'd probably start Devontae Adams over Neighbors regardless of if he plays or not. And hell, I think we maybe start the Seattle guys and Jacoby Myers ahead of him too. So I think we move Neighbors down to about wide receiver 20-ish. And we are just going to go ahead and play it safe. And I see a question in the chat right now that says Lad McConkey or Jerry Jeudy. And with Lad being a game time decision as well, it's like obviously very difficult to go through and submit these rankings for week 14 when I go, oh, okay, well, if Lad plays, I want him over guys like Garrett Wilson, Jerry Jeudy, Devontae Adams, DK Metcalf, JSN, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But Lad plays tonight, so you may not necessarily get that clarity by the time you have to make that decision. So how exactly am I supposed to rank him? I'm going to rank him as if like, oh, okay, I need to submit my starting lineup. I don't have all the injury news at the time that we have to do it with Lad McConkey. So if Lad doesn't go, I'm taking a pretty big risk. So if Lad's a true game time decision, I am going to move him down considerably. Like looking at this, if Lad was still a game time decision and I was choosing between him and Harrison, I would just go ahead and I'd take Marvin Harrison. So I'm going to drop Lad McConkey down significantly in our rankings. Now, of course, if Ladd were to be good to go, he would fly up. But it is just a difficult spot not knowing what to expect. And if you don't, if you play him and then he misses, you are just somewhat screwed here. So we'll go ahead. We'll submit those updated ranks. And I think we should, honestly, I forgot a cord for my camera. So this is just my laptop camera. And laptop camera, chef's kiss, looking good. Let me see. Please let me know in the live chat right now. How are we doing in terms of lagging? How's the stream quality at the moment? Because I did a little Wi-Fi test from the hotel's Wi-Fi before this, and it was crap. But looking good. Looking good. Jake says, best laptop camera I've ever seen. My friend, this is just the most handsome fella you've ever seen on a laptop camera. A little bit different between the two, but I appreciate it regardless. Let's go ahead. We have questions on the site that we need to get through. And once we get through the questions on the site, we can switch back over to questions in the live chat. People are saying this is a better camera than normal. Are y'all kidding? God, y'all are going from compliments to upsetting me. All right. It is what it is. Let's swing over and let's start answering some of these questions on the site. Obviously, if you wanted to get any guaranteed answers on this live stream, go over to flockfantasy.com. You can find the link in the description. Maybe I'll send it in the live chat. We'll see. But just hit the personalized advice button. You can send in the question for the live stream. It'll be answered on the stream. Y'all already all know this, but let's get into this. LB727 coming through with a roster review. Appreciate you, my friend. Let me hook you up with a bunch of free start set questions, as obviously I'm assuming that we don't really have the ability to make trades at this point. So sent you over a couple free start sets. So if you have anything that you want me to cover during the playoffs, and if you have anything, I'd be super happy to check it out. So say Mason, appreciate the team review Tuesday. I made a couple moves that you suggested, but I have a few more questions. Are there any other waiver wire pivots we should make before the fantasy playoffs, or any other start sit suggestions going into the future? Really appreciate you, my friend. Going to be excited to check this out. I will say you should be able to link a team on ESPN with the site so you don't have to submit screenshots. Regardless, I'll be happy to look at it. But here, quarterback with Justin Herbert. You are effectively just streaming the quarterback position. For me, I wouldn't be super excited to play Justin Herbert in this game. You do have a very low implied team total. You actually have sportsbooks projecting the Los Angeles Chargers to score fewer than 20 points today. So that is something that I would be on the lookout for and potentially try to pivot away from Justin Herbert with, to be completely honest, especially if you add on the fact that you are dealing with the Ladd McConkey injury. So possibly his best pass catcher is gone. So I know that you're obviously limited with the quarterbacks you can look at off the waiver wire for this week. And you are effectively just streaming here because we have Jaden Daniels for the long term. But I do think that you potentially find a better streamer than Justin Herbert. Going down to the bench, we have Daniels. So long term here, you're starting Daniels every single week, regardless of the matchup. I'm going over to running back. We have Bucky and Rachaad White. So we are just kind of monopolizing touches in this backfield. Obviously, if you get another Sean Tucker rushing touchdown, you'll probably lose your mind. I wouldn't blame you for it. But anyway, great matchup this week. I think you can definitely start both running backs if really need be based off the buys. But I would really hope that we can find somebody else than Rachaad White to start here in the long term. And going through and looking at what we have on the bench, we have Jonathan Taylor. So we're going to be rolling through with JT and Bucky Irving rest of season. So a very comfortable spot to be in for sure. And then going over to wide receiver, we have Adams, AJ Brown, Jaden Reed. I thought Jaden Reed was a decent start this week because you had no Romeo Doubs. And also you can see Detroit has allowed the 27th most points. They've allowed the 6th most points to opposing wide receivers so far this season. So I thought that, you have to throw the ball against the Detroit Lions. You have no Romeo Doubs. So you have a little more of a concentrated target tree in Green Bay. And the Packers went, we have to throw the ball against Detroit. How about we don't do that? And how about we just run it over and over and over and over again And Jaden Reed ends up getting you the goose egg this week, which is just absolutely brutal. But with that being said, going into the future, I think Jaden Reed will be a much better play than he has been previously. So I'm not super concerned on that front. And then looking at Calvin Ridley, really, I think the main conversation that you're going to have in terms of start-sit decisions going into the future is, are we going to be starting Jaden Reed or are we going to be starting Calvin Ridley? I think outside of that, the lineup is pretty set as is. If you're looking at potential waiver wire pivots, obviously Fairbairn's been just a phenomenal kicker so far this season, so I'm not going to fault you at all for wanting to hold on to him through his bye. Especially as we go into the fantasy playoffs, I'm not going to fault you at all for rostering two defenses either. The only thing I'd say is once we get through this week, I'm definitely going to cut the backup quarterback because I think you're going to be starting Jaden Daniels in weeks 15, 16, 17, absolutely regardless. So cut the backup quarterback, pick up whatever interesting waiver wire running backs available after this slate of games. Then after that, just try your best to make that decision between Ridley and Jaden Reed. I think a lot of it's going to come down to how Ridley looks this week and a phenomenal matchup, of course. And yeah, I will consistently go through and try to answer as many of these start-sit questions for you as possible, my friend. I think we hooked you up with 2 free start-sit questions. Let me hook you up with a 3rd free start-sit question. That way, just in case you have something on 15, 16, 17, hopefully I can help you out all the way through the fantasy playoffs. But I really do appreciate you, and I'm really sorry that you had the goose egg from Jaden Reed. The main thing I'll look at this week is just if you can potentially stream a little bit more of an exciting quarterback than Justin Herbert. I'm knowing it's a tough matchup against KC and the fact that you do have the injured Ladd McConkey, which I do think you have to lower expectations with Herbert. Okay. Now let's move over to our next question. God dang. Okay. Here's a little side note. All right. Obviously not sponsored. Now, if somebody here works for Liquid IV, I know they used to sponsor YouTube channels and podcasts back in the day. I am an adamant enjoyer of Liquid IV. Let me get that out of the way. Specifically, the caffeinated Liquid IV. This is what I do for my pre-workout pretty much every day. And now my streaming, essentially, in the morning. Has 100 milligrams of caffeine. And this is the same thing with anything that has caffeine in it. And I'm sure y'all are the same way. I know my girlfriend is. My girlfriend is a freaking caffeine addict. Like it's a serious issue. I've tried to get her to take a month break from it for years now, and she refuses. But y'all know when you get the caffeine in your blood, there's no better part of the day. Like I'm sitting here in a little dark, nasty hotel. I can give y'all a little tour of this. Hotel's pretty big, but it's pretty gross at the same time. Woke up, couldn't really sleep last night. You would think, oh, maybe Mason's in a bad mood. But we got the caffeine in the bottle. So we are feeling immaculate. It doesn't matter what's going on. When you get that caffeine, you're going to be in the best mood humanly possible. But we still have a bunch of questions on the site. So let's stop talking about caffeine and let's start getting through these. But I'm feeling really good right now. Tiny to Answer says, need help. Scenario playing if Walker and Bucky are out. Thinking Hopkins wide receiver 2, Lamb in the flex if all healthy. Okay, so it looks like you have no Walker, but Bucky should be playing. We already played David Montgomery. We have James Cook, obviously is somebody that we want to play regardless. Wide receiver, looks like Lamb's going to be good to go, and it's a great matchup going up against Cincy. So I absolutely think you have to play CeeDee Lamb here at your second wide receiver slot. And then where it gets interesting is down here in the flex. Actually, we don't have Bucky. You're saying we have Rachaad White. But I don't know if Bucky's going to play. I'm assuming that Bucky is playing, but even if he doesn't, I would say that Rachaad White still probably splits the backfield with Sean Tucker, or at least we saw Tucker get involved when you had the injury earlier in the year. So I just think he'll lock and load Zach Charbonnet. As a running back that we've already seen, he's going to have a 3-down workload. It's going to be a competitive game. Spread in this game's fewer than 3 points. He's going to have receiving usage. So I really like Zach Charbonnet here as a play. Zach Charbonnet is ranked as my RB12 this week at this point. Let's move this over to Dave, a massive dono. Really appreciate you, my guy. Let me hook you up with a free start sit question. That way next week you can send something over my way. But saying, Mason, help me, brother. JK on IR. Walker may not play. Somebody has Charbonnet already. What are my options if we don't have Walker? Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Always know. Thank you. And yes, we have no Walker. So this will be the first time I guess I'm saying this to somebody. You're going to play Sincere McCormick. This is a running back that a lot of people are excited about in Las Vegas because the Raiders are out of running backs. It's a decent little matchup going up against Tampa here. I think primarily this is a trap. If you have any real options, you're not going with this dude. But here, the question effectively is, are you going to go with Ray Davis or Sincere? Here you have to. Obviously, if Charbonnet would have been on your waiver wire, it would have been the easiest thing in the world to run out there and go grab Charbonnet. But you're saying he's already rostered, so we are a little bit screwed. Good news is we are just dominating out wide receiver, tight end, flex, our other running back slot, and quarterback. So this should be really the only weak spot on the roster this week. And also, it sounds like you may get Walker back in next week. But I see that we have Danny in the chat right now. Danny, my friend, I hope you hit that like button, hopefully. Says, hoping to get my playoff miracle. Sadly, without the help of my selfish RB1. Yes. Can everybody please spam the chat right now? RIP Danny. Danny is currently 6-7. He needed not only to win this week, but he needed some other guys to go down ahead of him. And sadly, he does not have Breece Hall. His co-host cucks him and picks up Braylon Allen instead of him. So he can blame Bush. He can blame Bush. But RIP Danny. And I'm sorry to hear it, my guy. You know, I was rooting for Danny and Sal to get in the playoffs. I was hoping that we were going to have one guy from Fantasyland, one guy from Stock Exchange, one guy from Domain, yours truly, and then obviously Sal. But sadly, it looks like the Fantasy Stock Exchange guys, no fault today. Bush, he has nobody to blame but himself. I've heard him complain, Brandon Ayuk got injured. Brandon Ayuk had one game with more than 10 fantasy points before he goes down. Ayuk wasn't helping that team. Danny, he can cry about it, and Danny, I give you 100% the right to. Danny's had every single major player injured on his team. Danny had a great team, and then it just absolutely collapsed. Now, I would say get your training staff in order. I would say get your players healthy, a little less Call of Duty, a little more time in the weight room. But that's just me. That's the mentality we have over at the Team of Destiny. And hopefully Danny can squeak it through regardless. But let's go over and check out this question from R. Salters Jr. Running back, we are looking at Sincere, Hunt, Vidal, and Ray Davis. Can y'all please spam the chat? Are y'all going to go with Hunt or Sincere? Hunt or Sincere? Obviously, I'm assuming that Pacheco is going to continue to expand his role in Kansas City. The Chiefs are a much better offense, though. I know everybody's in on Sincere this week, and I will say again, primarily it's a trap. I would avoid him. I would not play him. But I guess if we're comparing him to these other running backs that are clear RB2s in their backfield, you can go with them. I think Adam Thielen is primarily a trap as well. Again, I want to reiterate, while Bryce Young's looked much better over the past 2 weeks, this week sportsbooks are putting the Carolina Panthers as the lowest scoring offense in the entire NFL. I would not play your Panthers. But here, looking at your flex options, you have no freaking choice. You got to go ahead and you got to play Adam Thielen. Okay. Now, Flip Flap coming out with our next question. It says, must win for the playoffs, second in points for, and second highest points against, 6 and 7. Okay, well, here's where we got to start, buddy. We got to start thinking about defense. I know everybody wants to get flashy. Everybody wants to go, oh, look at my points for. I have great offense. Everybody wants to be the Cincinnati Bengals. Nobody wants to be the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm fine being the Pittsburgh Steelers in my league. I'm fine having elite defense, elite special teams, elite coaching, and willing to get there with a great record, even if people say that we are overrated. Here, come on, my guy. We got to play better defense. But stuck on my RB2 flex and wide receiver with Ladd McConkey questionable. Super brutal with Ladd, true game time decision, and at the same time, you're not going to get the clarity anytime soon. Quarterback, I'm going to go Kyler over Jameis. You do have really low projections here with this Browns offense going up against Pittsburgh. I know Jameis obviously looked good 2 weeks ago in the snow game, but I don't know. I'm going to trust Vegas. I'm going over to what we have at running back. Warren versus Sincere is going to be close. I think most people here are going to go Sincere. I'll reiterate, I think primarily he's a trap. Primarily, I want to avoid him. But if you are looking at him in comparison to clear running back twos in their own respective backfield, I think you can go in that direction. And here, if these are your options down at the flex, your best play outside of Ladd McConkey would be Jaylen Warren. And for me, I think that's enough of a drop-off where I'm willing to roll the dice with Ladd. And if he doesn't play, instead, I think you can pivot over to Joshua Palmer. No harm, no foul. So I'm going to go ahead. I will take Ladd McConkey. And then if Ladd is not good to go, we go over to Palmer. Now, real quick, I see that we have almost 1,000 people in here. Again, I want to apologize for two things. One, I'm in a hotel room, so if we lag a little bit, understand why. And two, I don't know the other thing to apologize for, maybe being too good looking in this live stream with this laptop webcam. But all I got to ask is hit the like button, ladies and gentlemen. Come on, what are we waiting for here? Coop says, are we going to go Myers or Judy? Heavily leaning Bucky over Brees. Well, got news for you, buddy. We now have no Brees Hall. I know you asked this question right before Brees was ruled out, but yeah, you have to go Bucky now. And then I'm going to go Jerry Jeudy over Jacoby Myers. I think Jeudy is even that much more appealing now that you have no Cedric Tillman. So the targets are just going to be a little more concentrated in Cleveland. Like we saw last week, obviously expect the passing volume to come down in this offense just a bit. And then going down to the flex, you're really choosing between Braylon Allen, Rico Dowdle, and Bucky Irving. Assuming Bucky's good to go, I think you just go ahead and you play Bucky. Great matchup against the Raiders. The Bucs currently project out to be a top 3 to 5 offense in the NFL this week, according to sportsbooks, where they presumably can run the ball a ton in the second half. Now let's move this over to Cali Kid. Always happy to see us. Says, what's up, Mason? Is there anybody droppable for Allen? If Hall doesn't play Ingram, I'm dropping for a DST. So looking at this, dear God, Rachaad White, probably. Obviously, you start Chase Brown. And then in terms of the other running back we're going to start this week will be James Conner. But I think if you wanted to drop Rachaad White for Braylon Allen, I wouldn't fault you for it. We're going to go Lamb. Actually, I'm sorry. This is a nutso team. I don't even think Braylon Allen matters much here. You said you're already dropping Ingram for a DST. I mean, we're going to go through and we're going to start Lamb over Braylon Allen regardless down in the flex spot, given how good the matchup is against Cincy. And Lamb should be 100% good to go, or at least that's what people are saying right now. You've consistently seen every week, but Thanksgiving when he dealt with the shoulder, that he is getting to double-digit targets. Probably the best matchup that you could possibly ask for. So this is just a nutso team. It's a phenomenal squad. So picking up Braylon Allen, honestly, shouldn't be that high of a priority for you. But if you wanted to go through and if you wanted to maybe drop Rachaad White for Braylon Allen, I wouldn't fault you for it. Now, LeVar Ball coming through. Always happy to see you. Full BBR, need to pick 2 out of 3. Evans, London, Kyron, what are you thinking? And could we get a chat poll? Sadly, my friend, I know it seems like we are good at this little live streaming thing. I'm not. It'd be very difficult for me to cancel out a current poll, launch a new poll. I'll ask everybody in the chat, and we can see who spams. And I'll let you know what they say. Who do y'all bench between Mike Evans, Drake London, Kyron Williams in a full PPR format? I'm going to be completely honest with you. When we're looking at these tier 1, tier 2 options in the flex rankings every week, typically for me, I'm not spending any time thinking about how you rank these guys because I would say, oh, everybody starts these players. I'm surprised that you ever go through and you ever bench one of these players, but I guess if you have just a crazy team here. Looking at the chat, we have London. Ooh, I'm surprised London was going to be the guy I was playing. Kyron, Evans, Kyron, London, Kyron, Evans, Kyron, Evans, London, Kyron. For me, full PPR formats, the receivers have the target volume. The Rams have just an absolute brutal matchup going up against the Bills. While I agree with people in the chat that I think Cousins really does struggle here, I think we can get garbage time Cousins. Like, Cousins threw 4 interceptions last week, and he still had 16 targets for Drake London, and London still got there regardless. So I think London is a guy that I play. I think if I was forced to bench somebody here, the guy that I would actually be benching is probably Kyren Williams. Full PPR format, tough matchup against the Bills. Obviously, no part of me wants to bench Kyren. He still sees, I mean, last week he didn't, but outside of last week, he's still seeing 90+% of the opportunities in his backfield. But you just have a really good team, I guess. Now, you're mixing me crazy coming through. So 6-7, and we need a win. Please help me out, Mason. Appreciate you, my friend. Super excited to check this out. Running back, we are looking at no Joe Mixon this week. So we got to play Dowdle in a great matchup. Half PPR format, I'm going to go Nick Chubb. Full PPR league, I think you can make an argument. Oh, but Jalen Warren's going to have the receiving floor. He's going to get you 4 targets, 3 receptions, 30 receiving yards. Nick Chubb, I mean, if the Browns trail, all of a sudden is going to be a running back playing fewer than 50% of the snaps with no receiving work. But honestly, I don't know. Half PPR format, the receiving usage is going to be worth a little bit less. Going over to the receivers, you have no Kincaid, but Keon Coleman is a game-time decision for Khalil Shakir. I will go with Harrison with him seeing a career-high 12 targets last week. And then down in the flex, I'm probably going to go ahead and take Juwan Jennings and really hope we get there with the Brock Purdy duo of Kittle as well as Jennings. Now, Damien coming through says, I'm a bozo and played Watson at the flex, knowing Keenan was trending towards playing. What are your thoughts, Hook'em Horns? Hook'em, obviously, we sadly took an L last week, but we're still in the playoffs, so we chilling. Looking at quarterback here, between Burrow and Tua, I think you go Burrow. Right now, you actually have the Cincinnati Bengals projected out to be the second highest scoring offense in the league this week, but obviously Tua's been on fire. Achane, just an absolute must-start. Running back, nothing to discuss. We're going to go with Myers and Metcalf, even though you do have Ridley in a great matchup. And then going down to the flex, for me, I'm actually going to take Braylon Allen. Obviously, I wish we could go in a time machine and start Calvin Ridley over Christian Watson, even though Watson gave you a fine game, right? It's not like Watson was a complete dud here. But if we are looking at Braylon Allen, you just have the guaranteed 3-down workload. I'm hoping you get some receiving usage. It's kind of funny, right? Because when Braylon Allen was everybody's favorite waiver wire pickup earlier in the year, we were thinking that he was like a premium handcuff back where if he steps in, immediately he is a running back 1 in fantasy. The offense is much worse than we were expecting it to be at the beginning of the season, though. So it's hard to say that, but I think I'd rank him as a mid RB2 based off volume, and that's somebody I'd want over Ridley. But JRB coming through with our next question says, hey, Mason, Baker or Darnold? And do we pick up Rome to replace a flex spot in a tough situation? Thank you. No, thank you, my guy. Running back, I'm going to go Braylon Allen over Tyrone Tracy. I think both running backs are in bad offenses, but I see a little bit of a higher ceiling in terms of what we have with the Jets. I'm going to go Baker Mayfield over Darnold myself, even though Darnold's been on an absolute tear as of late. Down in the flex, we have no Mixon. We have no Flowers. We have no Olave. So for me, I think you play Tracy. I think you get the running back with the guaranteed looks. Darnell Mooney, Juwan Jennings will be close, but Jennings really has cemented himself as the wide receiver 1 here in San Francisco. And you do have high raised expectations for this Niners offense in comparison to where we were a week ago. So I think we are going to go ahead. We are going to take Juwan Jennings over Darnell Mooney. Not the easiest call, though. Now, Micah coming through with the start set question says, Hall out and Walker also out. And need help at running back in the flex. Ignore the YouTube comments. Thanks for the content. Much love, my friend. Really appreciate you. And looking at this, we have very clear plays that we can get in. I would start Zach Charbonnet over Isaiah Pacheco this week. Because if I'm looking at Zach Charbonnet, this is a running back in which You do have a guaranteed 3-down workload. And with Pacheco, we don't exactly know the amount of volume that he should see. And he also has a pretty tough matchup against the Chargers. I'm going down to the 2 flex spots. Do we just take the run? I think you take the running backs. No. I think you go with the Jets. I think you go Devontae Adams and Braylon Allen. Again, I was too high on Isaiah Pacheco last week. 100%. I need to take that L. I thought it was a great matchup going up against the Raiders. I thought if he came in and saw anything more than 50% of the snaps, 50% of the opportunities, he was just going to absolutely crush. Clearly, the role wasn't there. He played like 30-something% of the snaps. And I think now maybe you can afford to wait just a bit with Pacheco and see what it ends up looking like. But I guess if you have, you know what? If you have Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams in your starting lineup, do we really want to get in 3 Jets? It really comes down, are you starting Pacheco or Braylon Allen? Can everybody please spam the chat? Are you going to be starting Isaiah Pacheco or are you going to be starting Braylon Allen? And the second thing is also, if you're in the chat and you have not hit that like button, for the love of God, what are you waiting for? Drop a like on this live stream. Sunday morning streams are by far, and I mean by far and away, the most important streams for us. So if you're ever going to hit that like button, I would kindly ask that you do it now. Help us out a ton. Okay. We got Pacheco, Allen, Pacheco, Allen, Pacheco. It looks like it's split 50-50. Again, I thought I was going to go with Allen. Then I saw the fact that you have 2 other Jets on your team, and I don't know if I want to tell you to start 3 Jets here. So I think it's up to you, but definitely start Charbonnet. Jordan says, how would you navigate all these injury scenarios? So this is what's difficult. And we'll know with Neighbors by the time you got to start him or bench him. Looking at Lad McConkey, he plays tonight. So for me, if Neighbors is good to go and Lad is not cleared, I'm going to be planning on going with Neighbors, Pickens, and Bucky down in the flex. Now, with that being said, if Neighbors is ruled out, Lad is not cleared by the time you need to make this decision, we pivot from Neighbors to Harrison. Now, if Lad is cleared by the time that you have to make this call, you go Lad over these guys. But the issue is, I don't want to tell you to do that. He's ruled out tonight, and that we have nobody really we can pivot to. So I think you go ahead. I think you probably end up starting Harrison. Obviously, you're going to be getting Bucky down there in the flex spot. If Bucky doesn't play for whatever reason, you can pivot over to Braylon Allen, but we're assuming that Bucky should be good to go. Now, Amancini coming through with just an obnoxious donation. My friend, thank you so much. Let me hook you up with, I'm going to send you over 3 free start set questions. That way, hopefully we are in the playoffs, and hopefully you can send me a start set question every single week through the rest of the season. You should have 3 free vouchers on your account, my guy. But standard scoring, win and we are in. Somehow still alive after 6 starters injured. Need 1 wideout and 1 running back. McCormick wasn't on the site, but he's also a running back option. Have a great weekend, Mason. Have a great weekend, my guy. Really do appreciate you and really excited to look at this. So I wish this was we needed 1 running back. I'm sorry, we needed 1 receiver and 1 flex. If it was we needed 1 receiver and 1 flex, we would start both Jerry Jeudy and DJ Moore. Here instead, I think out wide receiver, you go with Jeudy. I don't love the matchup against Pittsburgh. You do have some serious regression baked in for this Cleveland Browns offense, or at least that's what we are being told here from Las Vegas sportsbooks. But you have no Tillman, so the target should be concentrated at the very top between Jeudy, Elijah Moore, and David Njoku. Very similar to what we saw this past week. So I think Jerry Jeudy is more likely than not the receiver that you're going to be rolling with. And going over to what we have at running back, I would start Edwards over Vidal personally. I can't tell if the league settings are filled out correctly here or not, so we're going to answer it under every circumstance. If this is a non-PPR format, you go Gus Edwards. Non-PPR format, the complete lack of receiving usage for Gus Edwards is going to be so much of a smaller deal than it would be otherwise that I think you could go ahead and I think you could get him in here. However, if this is actually a full PPR league, then obviously Gus Edwards, with this projection of maybe getting 1 reception for 3 receiving yards, probably is not the path you want to be going with. And instead, maybe we pivot over to Sincere McCormick. So, can y'all please spam the chat? PPR format, are you going to go with Sincere or Edwards? I think it's very close. I think both running backs are in uncertain backfields where we know exactly what the role is going to be. If Edwards had a good matchup and he wasn't going up against the Chiefs, I would for sure be going with Gus Edwards. But my hesitation is Sincere is a better matchup. You actually have the projections with the Raiders and the Chargers offenses not being too far off. Let's see, we got Gus, Sincere, Gus, Sincere, Gus, 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 Sincere, Gus, Sincere, 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 Gus, Gus, Gus. It looks like it's split 50-50. Don't start Vidal. If it's a non-PPR format, you for sure go Gus. If it's a full PPR format and you wanted to go Sincere, I'm not going to fault you whatsoever with it. Because again, and let me pull this up for you right now. I was planning on maybe doing this a little bit later on the stream. But let me get together the implied team totals that we have for the games today. Because the last time I checked these, to be honest with you, was Thursday. And obviously, projections change, lines move. And I think this is an extremely valuable data point that we can be looking at here. And oh, dear God, I know. Probably don't want to see me doing that. But regardless, let's get this up. And this is not only going to maybe shine some light on this question, it's going to help out everybody here. This is a little cheat sheet of what sports books are saying in terms of what offenses will be great, what offenses do you want players that are in them, and what offenses do you want to be avoiding their options. So according to sports books, the best offenses this week where you want their options inside your starting lineup. The Eagles. Eagles are 14-point favorites here. So they probably don't run the ball. They probably don't throw the ball a bunch. You probably just see a ton of Saquon Barkley. But obviously, you start Barkley, start A.J. Brown, start Jalen Hurts, and Devonta Smith, strong consideration. The Detroit Lions, these are the teams that are always at the top. Cincinnati Bengals, duh. You start Chase Brown, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Joe Burrow. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 6.5-point favorites, project to be the 4th highest scoring offense this week. That's why Bucky Irving, top 10 running back in our rankings this week. Got to get him in. Evans, clear play. The Vikings, this is why we actually ranked Aaron Jones as not a strong play, but we didn't put Aaron Jones someone you wanted to bench, even though he had only 9 opportunities last week and had the fumble issues. Then you have the Bills, the Dolphins, the Steelers, then the Packers. Obviously, the Packers have already played. But then Cardinals, Niners, Saints, Chiefs. And then this is about where you get to the average offenses this week. The average offenses should be like the Rams, the Cowboys, the Titans, the Seahawks, the Falcons, the Bears, the Raiders. And then the bad offenses should be the Chargers, the Jets, the Browns, the Jags, the Giants, and the worst offense in the NFL. And it projects to be the worst offense in the NFL by a decent margin here is the Carolina Panthers. I know a lot of people are in on Carolina. Bryce Young's looked good over the past 2 weeks. It's been 2 weeks. This guy looked horrible for freaking 2 years. Sportsbooks are telling us that he's going to take a significant step backwards. But the entire point of me pulling this up for you is typically you'd look at like Sincere versus Gus and go, okay, well, the Chargers going to be a much better offense than the Raiders. But because of the matchup, you actually have the Raiders projecting out to be a slightly better offense than the Chargers. Now, they're pretty much identical. Not saying the Raiders are going to be a better offense by any means, but the projections are about the same between the two of them. So I don't think we can say, oh, you go Gus Edwards for sure because the offense is going to be so much better. Now, let's move this over to JB's question. Here's the start set. It says, Kate Otten and Hawkinson have good matchups. Not sure. Thanks. Thank you. Here, running back, yeah, 100% just go through and you start Zach Charbonnet. No question about it. And then down here at tight end, I'm going to go with Hawk. A little bit frustrating, of course, where you see the disappointing performance this past week. Both offenses project out to be in a really good spot. I could see the Vikings being a little bit more pass happy, though, where the Bucs should be able to just easily run the ball against this Raiders team. Now, going over to DHD, says, are Hall and Walker cooked? And then is the neighbor's injury serious? So the reports with Hall and Walker are that they should be, I don't want to say good to go, but they'll have a good shot to play week 15. I mean, both teams are saying that they're not shutting down either running back for the season. I'd be more concerned about Breece, of course, because the Jets aren't playing for anything. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take Tyrone Tracy at running back over Rashad White. Wide receiver, I think you just play it safe with Jerry Jeudy. And down in the flex, for me, if Malik Neighbors is good to go, I will play Neighbors. It's a garbage offense, but he is going to just dominate targets. You can say the same exact thing about Brian Thomas, but we have seen Neighbors be at the top of the NFL so far this season in terms of targets per game. Now, of course, there's a very real concern with Neighbors that he could be limited in this contest. And in that instance, you would want to pivot over. If he does miss, you want to pivot over to Brian Thomas. So whatever you do here, you don't start White, you don't start Adam Thielen. If Neighbors going to go, for me personally, I'd probably go with Malik Neighbors. But if you are more concerned about the Neighbors injury and him playing in a limited fashion, I wouldn't fault you at all for pivoting over to Brian Thomas. Now, Drew B says, got Daniels on bye and Breece is hurt. We're sitting at 9-4. You still go Bucky Irving over Braylon Allen here. And Kyler Murray is not a bad streaming quarterback by any means. We saw somebody streaming Herbert earlier, which is just much tougher to be in. I'm ready to go Jerry Jeudy for sure with no Devontae Adams. With no Cedric Tillman. And then the flex consideration is going to be tough between Dowdle, Braylon Allen, and Devontae Adams. Dowdle, great matchup, has looked really good over the past 2 weeks. Over 20 opportunities in both games. Now, the issue that you have with this, with Rico Dowdle is both those games, the Dallas Cowboys did win. So it's very difficult to know if that's exactly what we're going to expect this next week. Looking at Devontae Adams and Braylon Allen, both garbage offenses. But you should have pretty much every single touch here with Allen in his own backfield. So it is a difficult call here between the three. If I had to choose somebody full PPR format, I'd probably go with Devontae Adams. But I definitely don't love it, especially if Lazard is good to go. Now, Dylan Out Loud coming through with a start-sit question. So we have no Breece, we have no Walker, we have easy fill-ins. You're going to go with Zach Charbonnet. I'd go with Aaron Jones as well, given how good the Vikings offense projects out this week. On wide receiver, we're going to go with Jefferson and Tyreek, just much, much better offenses than what you're going to have with Brian Thomas. And then down there at tight end, I'm going to go with Hawkinson. I think you have a higher floor when it comes to the targets that you're going to get with Evan Ingram. However, I think you just have more touchdown opportunities and more points scored in Minnesota. Now, Kaleem coming through says, need a win to make the playoffs. Open to swap out any players of any position except quarterback. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's look at this. Garindo would be the guy that we want to get out at running back. It's really between Isaac Garindo or Braylon Allen. For me, I'm more confident with the talent profile that you have of Braylon Allen. Obviously, Garindo is in the better offense. However, for me, I would go with Allen. Garindo's offense projects to score about 4 more points this week. But I think we've seen Braylon Allen over a larger sample than Isaac Garindo. And it's hard to know for sure if Garindo's just going to come in and see that 3-down workload the way that Jordan Mason did. And going down in the flex, I'm going to be playing Devontae Adams unless Ladd McConkey is cleared that he is good to go by the time you have to make this decision. But the issue is it sounds like Ladd is a true game time decision. And obviously, the game for the Chargers is late tonight, so you're not going to have that clarity. Now, J.K. Lou coming through says, hey, Mason, I just lost Breece, so we are lost now. We're looking at Braylon Allen versus Tracy. I think both running backs are in bad offenses. You've seen the opportunities fall for Tracy in a big-time way over the past 2 weeks, and I do have a little more faith in the Jets offense than I do with the Giants offense at this point, so I would personally go with Braylon Allen. I'm going over to what we have with the receivers. I think just Cooper Kupp is going to be an auto start, even if it's a tough matchup and even if Kupp disappointed over the prior 2 weeks. And then we're going to go with Tyreek Hill and George Pickens. Obviously, Tyreek Hill hasn't been the top 3 wide receiver that you drafted him to be this season, but I still think he's more than capable of a flex option here. JSN's crushed. He's been the wide receiver 1 in Seattle for, I think, 5 straight weeks. But you still have DK Metcalf seeing more targets than in this past week, where I don't have that concern with either Tyreek or Pickens. Now, if you were to have no Pickens in this game, then I think your option to pivot over to would be JSN. Now, Yonder coming through with a massive dono here. Really appreciate you, my friend. Let me hook you up with a free start sit question. Says, Mason also need a dub this week for the bye. Placing number 1 in the league analyzer, and Gibbs only got 19. Need all your fantasy wisdom here. Let's get some dubs. Really appreciate you, my friend. Hopefully that free start set question was sitting you over. You don't have to use it week 15. Hopefully week 15, we're sitting back. We have an empty starting lineup, which is what I'm going to do in my league. I'm fighting out for the bye this week as well. If I win, I for sure get the bye. If I lose, but 2 other of my league mates lose, then I still get the bye. But I just need to focus in on, if I win, I have it. And then next week, I'm literally leaving my starting lineup empty. I'm resting my guys. Hopefully, you're doing the same here. But at wide receiver, I think you go ahead and I think you play Brian Thomas. I mean, with Thomas, don't love this setup with how bad this offense is. But you have no Kirk. You have no Davis. You really only have Evan Ingram and Brian Thomas to throw the ball to. So it's just an absolute garbage offense, but a super talented receiver that's going to dominate the targets in it. And then going down to what we have in the flex, it's really going to come to, actually, no, you have Charbonnet. You have Charbonnet, you go ahead and you play Zach Charbonnet. I think Charbonnet is a very clear play over the other backup running back with Braylon Allen. Much better offense, not only a better offense, but at the same time, we have seen the 3-down workload and we have seen the receiving usage. And then we're playing him over Dowdle as well. Well, Dowdle has had the workload over the past 2 weeks in games where you have the Dallas Cowboys winning and they're actually able to run the ball. But obviously, it's hard to project that going up against the Cincinnati Bengals this week. Now, Case Soliner coming through. Always happy to see you. Went from 8-0 to 8-5. Oof. Been rough with CMC gone now. Praying for a miracle. God bless Mason. God bless my friend. And yeah, the team in my league that... So I'm currently the 2nd seed. There are 2 teams behind me that are 3rd and 4th. Like I said, they're trying to come for my bye. And the team that's currently 4th in the league standings just lost CMC, and they have a very thin team to begin with. So what I'm really rooting for in my own league this week is I want to lock up the bye week there at 2. So if we're looking at what we could potentially do in my own league, I just really want the CMC team to get the 3 seed. That way they're on my side of the bracket. And then the team that's at 3 right now is so much better than them. I hope that they get the 4 seed. I'm going on a tangent. But yeah, obviously it's brutal for the teams that lost CMC going right through the fantasy playoffs. Like, that's who you want to go up against now. Thank God we have Charbonnet. Charbonnet just makes this a very clear play this week. And you're really hoping you have Charbonnet to play next week as well. Charbonnet is just an absolute crusher here. And then down in the flex, I'm also going to go with Braylon Allen. It's absolutely brutal, the fact that we had Gene Reed giving us the goose egg here. But obviously, no Nico Collins, no CMC. It is just a really tough spot. With Braylon Allen, you should have the guaranteed workload, similar way that you have with Charbonnet. The only thing is, I would say the offense is going to be worse, and we're not as certain about the receiving usage. But let me hook you up with a free start set question, my friend. So hopefully next week we can be sending one in. You should be good for the playoffs regardless, though. Now, Ray Charles coming out says, Mason, I need a win to get into the playoffs. Amon-Ra did not meet his quota. Are we going to flex Addison or Jennings? For me, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take Jennings. With Jordan Addison, trust me, I have him in so many underdog drafts that I'm praying to God that he is the guy that goes through and blows up this week, and you could very easily see it. But obviously, he has no shot to lead his team in targets. Juwan Jennings has cemented himself as the wide receiver 1 there. You have no IU, you have no CMC. So ultimately, you should have the touches being a lot more concentrated in this offense than they otherwise would be. And at the same time, while we really didn't want to start Jennings last week because sportsbooks were so low on the offense, I think a lot of it had to do with the weather plus the matchup. This week, you actually have the projections a lot higher on San Francisco. So I think Jennings is much more of a viable play than he was previously. Now, Slashero coming through says 10-3 in the playoffs. So this isn't a must win. I'm okay if you pick a guy contrary to the popular opinion. Really appreciate you, my friend, and excited to look at this. I don't know if it's a popular opinion or not. I know it wasn't a popular opinion when we were saying it at the very beginning of the season. But Zach Charbonnet, the second that you know you have no Kenneth Walker as a running back one, you have to put him in your lineup. You have no other option. Charbonnet is a must-start player. Going over to wide receiver, I think you got to play Brian Thomas. With Brian Thomas, I'm not excited about it. It's a brutal spot where you have garbage quarterback play. We go over and we look at sportsbook projections. They have the Jacksonville Jaguars as a bottom 3 offense this week, only ahead of the Panthers and Giants. But again, when you have no Gabe Davis, you have no Christian Kirk, the targets will just be very concentrated between the combo of Brian Thomas and Evan Ingram. And going down to what we have in the flex, we have no Derrick Henry this week. So I think you just have to go ahead. I think you have to play Waddle. I'm actually considering playing Waddle with my own team here. Maybe I need to see if we have any more DeAndre Swift updates. But I think I'm also going to be flexing Jalen Waddle myself. Knowing that there's a chance we have no Swift. But the thing is, when you flex Waddle, it's a good offense. So you do have some touchdown upside. Like, you do have the Dolphins projecting out to be the 5th highest scoring offense. I mean, 4th highest scoring offense in the league this week. No, it may be 5th, regardless of whatever it is. Let me see if we have any news on Swift, because Swift would be the guy that I get in for my own team. Swift expected to play, dropped 4 hours ago. Okay, so for you, you're definitely starting Waddle. But for me, I needed help with the people in the chat. For the love of God, please help me in the chat. Do you start Jalen Waddle or DeAndre Swift this week? I am battling for my life for this bye. And this is a side note, but I just want the bye so bad, right? Because here's how I view fantasy football. And this is a completely different tangent. Getting to the fantasy football playoffs is a skill, right? You have a 14-game season, a large sample, and you're able to go through and you're able to prove over that large sample, okay, I had a good team or I had a bad team. But once you get into the playoffs and it's you lose, you're out. And it's a 1-game sample every week. It's random. I don't want to say it's all luck, but a lot of it is luck in the playoffs. So getting that bye week and being able to just get one lucky win in week 16, and then you're automatically in the fantasy football championship in week 17 is freaking massive. So I am staying up. I couldn't sleep last night. I was just thinking, I need a bye. I need a bye. Hopefully y'all are battling it out for a bye week as well this week. Hopefully y'all have already locked up getting into the playoffs. But there's a big difference between not having the bye and having the bye. Big, big difference. So massive decision for me. Probably the biggest decision I've had all year. So let's see what people said, Swift or Waddle. Swift. Okay, everybody's on DeAndre Swift. I will go ahead and I'll make the swap with my own team. We will get DeAndre Swift in my lineup, and we will move out Jalen Waddle. And here's what we're going to do. If y'all screw me, similar to how y'all stay in my comment section, screaming at me when I make a bad call, deservedly so, I will hunt down everybody in this chat that said DeAndre Swift over Jalen Waddle. I will find your Gmail account, and I will email you every single day of how you screwed me. And I'll call you a clown, and I'll try to hurt your feelings the way the comment section does to me, successfully and understandably. So please, Swift, come through for us and give us that bye. But for you, you're going with Waddle, my guy. You don't have that decision. Really, it's like Waddle or Thielen or Romaduzza. You for sure go Jalen Waddle over those options. Now, Travis coming through with the start set question. Running back, 100%, you go Charbonnet over Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones' workload shaky with the fumbles. Charbonnet, no shaky workload whatsoever. He has it all. And going over to receiver, if Neighbors is good to go, I will go with Malik Neighbors, and we should know in about 3 minutes or so. If Neighbors is not, then we pivot over and we go with Calvin Ridley here. Because obviously Ridley has a good matchup, and Ridley has seen the majority of the targets. Okay. But let's go ahead and let's refresh this, get some more questions on the screen. And obviously, we're going to be answering all the questions through the site, guaranteed, as we do every single live stream. And then hopefully we have some time as well where we can pivot over and we can get to your questions in the chat too. So let me finish the questions in this live stream. And if you ever wanted to get a guaranteed question answered, you can go over to flockfantasy.com. You can hit, you know what we need to do? We don't even have the flockfantasy.com thing up on this screen. We have it on the desktop version, but let's go flockfantasy.com. You can hit personalized advice. You can send in a question over there, but hopefully we can get through them all and we can get to a bunch of free questions in the chat, as we usually have been able to on Sunday mornings. And you can see these are the questions that we have on the queue on the left side. So Jay Cougar, I believe that's how you say this. If not, I apologize. I'm stupid. Here, we need to decide at wide receiver. We're going to go with Adams, Thomas, or Smith. I'm going to go with Adams. I would love to say, like, oh, Devonta Smith's going to crush this week. I'm starting Devonta Smith with my own team. Issue is going up against the Panthers. They can probably run the ball a bunch. And then going over to the flex is where it gets interesting between Brian Thomas and Smith. So, again, the Jags project out to be the third worst offense in the league this week. The Eagles project out to be the highest scoring offense in the league. But with that being said, you do have the Eagles presumably being able to run the ball. You have no Dallas Goedert, so targets will be a little more concentrated. Let me see if... Are we logged into Underdog on our laptop? For the love of God, tell me we're logged in. Hell to the yes. So we can look at what the Underdog projections have here. Brian Thomas... They currently have higher, lower 60.5 receiving yards, but unlikely to score the TD because it's a tough matchup, and they have Devonta Smith significantly lower. So this is where we got to go through and we got to double check ourselves, right? If it's like, oh, okay, well, they are neck and neck with yardage projections. I think Smith's in the better offense. Let's go Smith. If this is the gap between them on these projections, you just have to go ahead. You have to take Brian Thomas over Devonta Smith. You just get significantly more target volume. Now, Mark DJ coming through with a super message says, flex play, Charbonnet, Braylon Allen, Jalen Waddle, Xavier Worthy. Thanks. Thank you, my friend. 100% Zach Charbonnet is in a completely different tier than all these other options. Not only for you, but I want to say this for everybody in this live stream. Hit the like button on this live stream if you have not done so already. Come on, what are you waiting for? And second thing is, if you have Zach Charbonnet, you play Charbonnet. We saw it at the beginning of the year. You have the receiving usage. You have every single touch in this backfield. It's a pretty damn good offense, or it's a decent offense. You're not having to worry about it being the freaking Jets. If you have Charbonnet, you play Charbonnet. Really appreciate you, my friend, and really hope you're able to win this week. Bills Mafia, always happy to see you. Here, we're starting Braylon Allen, and we're considering Jalen Warren or Zach Charbonnet. So I think this was asked right before we had the Walker news, but for sure you are going with Charbonnet at this point. Well ahead of Jalen Warren. And then down here in the flex, really the only conversation to be Keenan Allen or Devonta Smith. I am so surprised to see Devonta Smith project out this low here with no Dallas Goedert this week. Obviously, the target volume's been really low here for Smith in Philly in general, but let me see. How do they have... I'm going to go with Smith regardless, but I'm just interested to see it. Yeah, they have Keenan projected for more yards than Smith. I think, honestly, Devonta Smith for higher than 46.5 receiving yards with no Dallas Goedert may actually be one of my favorite picks this week. Do we have any boost on Underdog? No. Gosh dang, I was hoping we were going to have a boost here. All right. But anyway, I would go with Smith. It's a really good offense. Obviously, they can run the ball a ton, but I don't know. You have no Goddard's. Isaiah says, pick 2 to start, Garindo, Charbonnet, or Braylon Allen. I'm for sure going to go Charbonnet here. Charbonnet is in a completely different tier. Garindo, Braylon Allen will be close for me. I probably go Braylon Allen. I think we've seen a slightly larger sample of Braylon Allen being an efficient running back and looking good at times. And I think it's tough to just rank Garindo immediately as you would have Jordan Mason early in the year. Is obviously back when Jordan Mason was dominating, this was a situation in which he did have the, 3-down workload to himself, while at the same time it was a much better offense. So I think you're going to go ahead. I think you take Charbonnet and Braylon Allen, but we have news. According to the chat, Pickens is inactive. Ladies and gentlemen, George Pickens is inactive. Let me go through and refresh the Underdog door. This is literally where I just get all my news from at this point. Like, I feel like Twitter's search. I used to use Twitter as kind of like Google in a way, where I would just like search things on it. But their search like just doesn't really work anymore. So literally all I do, and this is by no means an Underdog promotion, I would say this regardless. Even people who aren't sponsored by Underdog do this. Just literally go to Underdog _ NFL if you're on Twitter, because this is where all the news comes. But George Pickens is inactive for week 14. RIP. Let's update the ranks. Not only are we going to be moving Pickens down, we are going to be moving Russell Wilson down as well. Where did we have George Pickens? We had him wide receiver 12. Let's get his butt to the very bottom. And I know we can go, maybe Calvin Austin's interesting. If you're in a super deep dynasty league, sure, you can look at Calvin Austin, where there's no way that I am starting him in a regular redraft league. And then also, I think we move Russ down just a bit. At this point, I'd rather play Darnold over Russ. I'd rather play Mahomes. I'd rather play Purdy. So then we move Russ down to I would rather play Stafford over Russ. And then we move Russ down to like a QB2. I wouldn't be excited to play Russ with no Pickens, even if the offense projects out well. They probably end up running the ball a bit more. I'm not going to mess with the Najee ranking, though. So let's go ahead and let's get that out. Those are just for the week 14 ranks. And let's see if we have any other news other than no George Pickens. Josh Reynolds, inactive. Don't care. Condre Miller is active for week 14. Maybe if you're in a deep league, picking him up off the waiver wire wouldn't be a bad idea. You have no Alexander Madison. You have no Raheem Mostert. Bucky Irving is good to go. And Malik Neighbors is active, ladies and gentlemen. Malik Neighbors is active. So if you have Neighbors, you can start him. He may be limited. But I see people in the chat asking if we have any news on Ladd. I'll continue to update as soon as we get anything. To be honest with you, I'm expecting you're probably not going to get much. I mean, at the end of the day, he plays tonight. Really, the only reason, if you're the Chargers, right? The only reason you would come through and give any news about Ladd McConkey this morning is if you go, hey, we want to throw a bone to the fantasy football players. That's the only reason they would, which I will say, like, please let me know if I'm crazy with this. And I very easily could be. Doesn't it seem like we've had very few of these situations this season where it's been, oh, this player is questionable to go on Sunday night, questionable to go on Monday night, and we're not going to get news by the noon slate? It seems like the NFL has done a good job outside of San Francisco of like giving us the injury news that we need in a timely manner to make decisions. Maybe this is conspiracy theory world here, but it seems like the NFL has actively realized, or they probably realized for a long time, but actively have thought like, hey, fantasy sports betting is a big part of this at this point. We probably got to try to give injury news to receivers and running backs ahead of the noon slate, even if the games are later in the day. So it seems like we've had very few of these situations this year where it's like, oh, he's a game time decision for Sunday night. You got to guess. But I think that's what it's going to come down to here with Ladd McConkey. But let's move this back over and answer some more of the questions on the site. We already answered this for Isaiah. We're going to go with Charb and Allen. Allen versus Garindo is close, but you for sure start Charbonnet. Cryptic, happy to see you. We need a flex call that said Dynasty League, so definitely going to be a little bit deeper here. You have no Madison, you have no Eckler, you have no Taylor. We're looking at Lockett, Brandon Cooks, Nick Westbrook-Akine. We're going to go with Nick Westbrook-Akine. I will say, and I want to be on record right now, this dude's a trap. I know a lot of people are super excited to play him. I know he's the sneaky start of the week. The guy's scoring a touchdown on every 5 targets. It's the picture perfect example of something that will change over a larger sample, and it's impossible to project this touchdown efficiency for the long term. Now, of course, really good matchup this week. And what other option do we have? Brandon Cooks? No, you go with Nick Westbrook-Akine instead. But I definitely want to make sure that people know if you're looking at him versus real options, like don't play him over Marvin Harrison Jr. You don't want to go with the touchdown or bust receiver in a bad offense. Now, Ghost says, flex is my issue this week. Rico, Tracy, Charbonnet now that Walker's out. And when you start Disley over Hawkinson or Henry. Nope. You go ahead, you play TJ Hawkinson. And then for the flex here, it's Zach Charbonnet, and I don't think it's too close, my friend. You go ahead, you jam in Charb. You have the 3-down workload guaranteed. He's pretty much going to be the only running back to touch the ball in this backfield. You have the receiving usage. The offense is better than what you have in Dallas and New York. I know people are going to hate me for saying this, but I also think Charbonnet is a better talent than Rico Dowdle. I think he's right there. For me, I think he's maybe better than Tracy. I didn't say that, but somebody else in the chat maybe said it. Don't blame me for saying it. I think Charbonnet is an extremely talented running back. He was dominant at UCLA. He was drafted in the 2nd round. If you got Sharp, you play Sharp for sure. And wishing the best of luck, my friend. Now, I'm so terrible at fantasy coming through. So started Reed, mainly wondering about the flex. Running back, you go Sharp over Pollard. Again, for the love of God, anybody here that has Zach Charbonnet, you play Charbonnet. Can I see what the underdog projections are with Sharp? Charbonnet is higher or lower 93.5 total yards on underdog. For the love of God, you play Zach Charbonnet. You're even odds to score a touchdown here. Like, for the love of God, get this dude into your starting lineup. Okay. Going over and looking at what we have at receiver, you go Puka Nacua, even in a tough matchup. And then down here in the flex, it really is down between DJ Moore, Tony Pollard. I'm actually probably going to go ahead and take Pollard. Actually, no, it's close. DJ Moore is banged up. Pollard, you have a really good matchup. This is going to be one of the very few instances that you ever have. It says it's a non-PPR league. If this is a non-PPR league, you go Pollard. If it's a full PPR format and you want to pivot over to DJ Moore, I'm not going to follow you. Obviously, DJ Moore back-to-back 20-point performances. Everybody's really excited about the guy that's been scoring points. And y'all know I'm not a big Pollard fan, but the thing with Pollard is like the only game you're going to see this year where the Titans are favored by 5 points. So it's like one of the very rare spots where you actually could decide to get Tony Pollard inside your starting lineup. Now, Ipsy Joey coming through with a team review. My friend, I'm really sorry. I'm going to skip over this right now just to make sure we get to the start set questions in time. We will get back to it, I promise. But I don't necessarily know if doing a team review right before the games for you is going to help out too much. Let me answer the start set questions, though. You're saying Jalen Warren or Elijah Moore in the flex. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take Elijah Moore with no Tillman. And then maybe Braylon Allen could say me in the playoffs. Tillman's my... Okay, so what's the team? Mahomes the GOATs. Mahomes the GOAT. Okay, so looking at waiver wire pivots, drop Vidal, pick up Hunt. We have no Braylon Allen anymore. You have to start 9 guys. If it's a 1-quarterback format, you start Mahomes, Allen, Hubbard, it's 3. London, St. Brown, that's 5. Elijah, 6. Kelsey, and then maybe we're throwing Nick Chubb, Otten into the flex spots. But again, I'm not going to give a full-blown team review right now. Let me get to all these other questions. We're going to save it, and we can get to the team review right after the games. We'll get to that on Monday for you, my friend. But Zach says leaning towards Tracy, but we can't decide. Here, running back, we have Braylon Allen, Tyron Tracy to choose from. For me, I think that they are very close. I actually think that Braylon Allen sees less competition in his own backfield with the Brees injury than you do have with Tracy with Singletary. So I would go with Braylon Allen. And then down here in the flex, I think you'll leave it as is. Now, DK Jones says, bye week issue. Are we going to go Pacheco or Rashad White? Chase Brown is RB1. I'm going to go with Pacheco. I made a horrible call last week thinking that Isaiah Pacheco was a decent play in a game against the Raiders where I thought the Chiefs were just going to be able to run the ball a ton. Clearly we are wrong. Clearly horrendous call. But now you have another 9 days. It's his second game in this offense. So I think Pacheco could be viable now. Now, C. McCoy coming through says, Neighbors' injury has me concerned, and this is a must-win for the playoffs. Who is the better flex? Looking at this, I would still go Neighbors over Braylon Allen in a full PPR format. If you were concerned about Neighbors being limited, which is a real concern, can we see what the underdog pick is with Neighbors? We were talking about going with the lower than 70 receiving yards previously. They do not have a pickup with Neighbors. So maybe, honestly, that is very concerning. Braylon Allen, they have higher, lower 74.5 total yards. A full BBR format, I think we go Neighbors over Braylon Allen, but it's close. If you are really concerned about the injury and you think that he is going to be limited here, I'm not going to fault you at all for pivoting over to Braylon Allen. And honestly, looking at your, I'm changing my mind with your team in particular. Very rarely are we thinking like, oh, here's the context of our team. Here's how we change. But you have 2 top 5 running backs. You have 2 wide receiver ones. You have an elite tight end and an elite quarterback. So with your team in particular, you just need to be going for safety. So I think with your team, I just go Braylon Allen. I think Neighbors is a higher ceiling, though. Dion G says, hey, Mason, super tough decision this week for the flex. Flex, we're looking at Aaron Jones versus Devontae Adams. I do agree with you. I think that is a pretty tough spot. If you look at the projections you have specifically for the Vikings offense, I mean, they are really good. They should be a borderline top 5 offense in the league this week. It's a full BBR format. You do have highly concentrated targets here for the Jets. So I probably go with Adams, given the fact that you do have a little bit of uncertainty surrounding Aaron Jones and the overall opportunities we should expect in this Vikings offense after the fumbles. I still think that, I mean, they're in the same tier for me. If you look at my flex rankings, they are very close. So I still think that Aaron Jones is a fine play, but for me personally, I'd probably go with Adams. Now, Luke Cage coming through with a start-sit question. A running back, we are going to be going with Braylon Allen over Tracy and Garindo. Wide receiver, I'm going to be going with Evans as well as A.J. Brown alongside Amon-Ra St. Brown. And then down in the flex, full PPR format, I think you can strongly consider a receiver here, whether that's Myers, Jennings. If I was going to go with the running back, I would go with Garindo over Tracy, with Garindo being in a better offense and Tracy losing some work here, specifically to Singletary. I do have Myers ranked ahead of him. However, it's a really good matchup for Jacoby Myers. And this is the highest you're pretty much going to see the Raiders offense projected out. Assuming Myers is good to go and you don't have to worry about anything, then you just go with him. Now, Dizzle coming through with the start-sit question. Here down in the flex, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take Jerry Jeudy in a full PPR format. I think is a very easy play with no Cedric Tillman. While you are expecting some serious regression in this Cleveland Browns passing offense, you are looking at a wide receiver that should see concentration at the top with targets because you have no Cedric Tillman. So I think you can go with Jerry Jeudy here. Now, Daniel says, help at the flex, please. Thanks so much, Mason. No, thank you so much, my guy, for being a member of the flock. Here we have no Terry. We have no Tillman. I think it's either going to be James Conner or Zach Charbonnet. For me, if you look at my rankings this week, we do have these running backs very close. I have Charbonnet at running back 12. I have James Conner at running back 13. I'm interested to see what the underdog picks have here. I know we already saw Zach Charbonnet was higher, lower, 93.5 total yards. You had James Conner higher, lower, 85.5 total yards. So that does line up with what we have with our own rankings as well. So I think it's very close. I'd love to start both players, obviously, of a nutso team. But also, you have no George Pickens, so you're going to have to make a pivot off of Pickens here as well. With no Tillman, with no Terry, with Keon being a game time, I think you probably go ahead and you take Rome Odunze and you send up a prayer that you actually have some targets being siphoned off from Keenan and DJ Moore. But hi, Mason, coming through with the question. Here we need 3 receivers. We have no Pickens, so we're going to be going with Brian Thomas, Lamb, and we're going to be playing a banged-up Neighbors, hoping that he is okay enough. And then I'm going to go with Elijah Moore over Calvin Austin. I mean, obviously, Calvin Austin, you should maybe expect another target or 2 with no Pickens here. And Austin does get there with the receiving touchdowns in an absolute shootout this past week. But I don't know how confident you can be about the passing volume in Pittsburgh. And with Elijah Moore, you also have no Cedric Tillman. So you're in a decent spot to see a few more targets going over in his direction. And I think Elijah Moore's a better player. Gavin coming through says, started Reed, needs some help this week. Thanks. So we are looking for this ceiling play here. I think Aaron Jones does have a high ceiling given this matchup. I would really want to get off of Russell Wilson if you can. Russ with no Pickens is somebody that I would prefer to avoid. Going down to the flex, we are looking at Garindo, Braylon Allen really is the only 2 considerations. I would go ahead. I'd take Braylon Allen with no Breece Hall. We saw the ceiling earlier in the year, right? Where now we can't necessarily say, oh, okay, we know this dude is a locked and loaded RB1 because the offense is worse. But it's still a fine spot where you can play him if need be. Now, Sal coming through says, hey, Mason, love the content, brother. Who are we going to flex? Well, running back, you're for sure going to play Chase Brown. Wide receiver, we're going to be going with Kupp and Evans. You have a phenomenal. We even have Bowers at tight end. Running back, we can go through and we can play Charbonnet and Bucky. Absurd team. As we already got the 3 rushing touchdowns from Jacobs. Yeah, great team here, my guy. I think that you are just going to absolutely crush. And good luck this week. Now, Go Bengals coming through says, hey, Mason, I have all 3 guys for my wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2. With my flex already playing, who are we going to sit? Probably, dear God. I will say, like, with my wide receiver rankings that are this high, and same thing with the flex rankings that are this high, just to be completely honest with you and pull back the curtain, I don't spend a lot of time thinking about this. Like, when we put out the wide receiver rankings, I'm not sitting here thinking, oh, okay, I really got to make sure we nail who we want between Mike Evans or Drake London. Because my base expectation is, oh, okay, well, these guys are going to be started absolutely regardless. So it is a tough spot to have to go through and try to decipher between the 3. Kupp, you have a tough matchup here. I know London, it's a tough defense to go up against with the Vikings, but yeah, they actually do allow a decent amount of points to opposing wide receivers. The Falcons should be forced to throw the ball here a bunch as well. I literally have Evans, London, Kupp all ranked back to back to back. I have Kupp the lowest. Kupp has a tough matchup, and at the same time, Kupp's the guy coming off a dud performance. Can we see if there's a big difference between the projections on Underdog? Kupp's higher lower 67.5 receiving yards. Evans is higher lower 75.5 receiving yards. London is higher lower 71.5 receiving yards. So yeah, looking at this, my rankings have Kupp as the lowest guy. So do the projections on Underdog. It's not an easy call by any stretch of the imagination, and I wouldn't fault you whatsoever if you didn't want to bench Kupp, but I think you probably bench Kupp coming off the tough week. Now, McCon coming through says, need a win here. Any advice to play God defense? Okay, here's what you got to do, my friend. If y'all been watching the Flock League, which I'm assuming McCon here has, y'all have realized that my real specialty in fantasy football and what I am truly great at is playing defense. All right. My points against is so much lower than anybody else in my league. Everybody thinks, oh, that's lucky. Oh, blah, blah, blah. No, it's not. There's clear strategy behind it. You got to have grit. You got to bite kneecaps. And you got to go through, motivate the team Sunday morning. Send those DMs on Instagram. Tell them, hey, you're going to crush it. Hey, we need you in this game. And also, you got to message your league mates. You got to tell them that they're not crap. Their kids won't be. Their great-grandkids won't be. And your entire family line will be better at fantasy football than theirs. So, got to get the motivating factor in, both for your own players and you got to intimidate your opponent. That's how you go ahead and play great defense here, my friend. But anyway, on the offensive side of the ball, I would start Braylon Allen over Isaac Guerendo here personally. Going down to wide receivers, we're going to go ahead. We're going to lock and load Tyreek Hill and Malik Neighbors. Obviously, looking at Neighbors, you do have to be concerned about him possibly playing a part-time role and being limited with the injury this week. But still, at the outside chance that he does see his usual 12 targets, I'm playing him over freaking Jalen Waddle. I'm going over to tight end. We have Kittle over Jonnu. And then down in the flex, I know people are going to absolutely hate me for saying this. I think you may bench Jonnu. I know Jonnu, 3 straight games over 100 receiving yards. He's looked phenomenal. He's higher or lower 49.5 receiving yards on Underdog at the moment. Looking at Isaac Guerendo, he is higher or lower 90. I am super surprised by this. Apparently, we are way too low on Isaac Guerendo in our rankings. I'm not going to lie to you. Literally, just after seeing that, I'm going to move Guerendo ahead of Pacheco if that's what the projections are on him. Higher or lower 93.5 total yards on Guerendo. Again, I'm not ranking him right away as a running back one the way that you did with Jordan Mason at the beginning of the season. Because if you were looking at Jordan Mason, he was stepping in. You already knew he was going to have every single touch based off what you had in the early weeks. And at the same time, this was an offense that projected to be one of the better offenses in the league, where that's not inherently the case here with the Niners at this point. So, I don't know. I'm not initially ranking Guerendo as an RB1, but maybe next week he is once we actually see the workload. But dear God, I'm terrified now. I have to play against this dude. GQ coming through with the start set question. Wide receiver, you go Jerry Jeudy, no Tillman. Targets should be concentrated up at the top. I'm going down in the flex. Y'all know I'm not a big Chuba Hubbard guy. I think, okay, you're a committee back and a horrible offense. No thanks. And don't get it twisted. This is a horrible Panthers offense. Bryce Young's looked good over the past 2 weeks, but he's looked horrible over the past 2 years. Go with a larger sample, not the smaller one. You can see that's what sportsbooks are doing, where sportsbooks currently have the Panthers as the lowest scoring offense in the league with an implied team total about 15.5 points. And not only do they have the Panthers as the lowest scoring offense in the league, but it's by a wide margin as well. So for me, it's either going to be Calvin Ridley or Isaiah Pacheco. I probably rolled the dice here. I did with Pacheco last week. Obviously, it burned us to an insane degree. But now it's a second game back. You have 9 days between the last game and today. So maybe they ramp him up even a little bit more. For me, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take Pacheco. I don't love the matchup, though. Last week, I loved the matchup against the Raiders. Now, Trevor, always happy to see you. When did I'm in? Picked up Charbonnet, but do we play him? I would play Bucky Irving over him. Down in the flex, I'd play him over these other wide receivers. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take Charbonnet. I have James Conner and Zach Charbonnet ranked back-to-back in my rankings. I'm playing James Conner with my own team this week, so I'm really hoping that I'm wrong here. I'm really hoping that you actually just have James Conner dominating. Hopefully we get a 2-touchdown performance and get some receiving work. But Charbonnet, you're not going to have to worry about him being in a committee. We have seen James Conner lose work to secondary running backs in Arizona over the past month or so, where I don't think that's going to be the case here with Charbonnet. I think Charbonnet honestly probably sees more targets as well. Now, Big Boy Crispy says, got to make the playoffs, Mason. Please, we need some help. I would go James Cook over Kyren Williams. Better offense, and at the same time, you have more receiving usage, even if Kyron's going to have a higher percentage of his own backfield. And then here in the flex, this is tough. Kyren Williams, so far this season, has had 90+% of the opportunities in Los Angeles. So you could make a very strong argument that Kyren Williams still remains just a must-start option every single freaking week. But you also have CeeDee Lamb here in a matchup against the Bengals. Can I compare the projections that we have? Non-PBR format is Kyren easily. But the issue is Kyron's not going to have the receiving involvement that Lamb will. I don't think you play Kyren. Full PPR format against the Bengals. Sounds like Lamb is good to go. I think it's either Lamb or Kupp. I think I probably end up going with CeeDee Lamb here. Can y'all please spam the chat? Who do you start? Lamb, Kupp, Kyren. Lamb, Kupp, Kyren. Who are you going with? Please let me know in the live chat. Really appreciate it. And like I said, again, typically with my rankings, I don't spend a ton of time thinking like, oh, how do I rank Lamb versus Cooper Kupp? Because I assume 99% of leagues, you got them, you play them. But we got Kyren, Lamb, Kyren, Kupp, Kyren. So everybody in the chat is saying that they want to go ahead and they want to take Kyren Williams here, my friend. You know I'm an idiot. I could very easily be wrong with this. So if you wanted to pivot over and go Kyren Williams, I'm not going to fault you whatsoever. Again, Kyren has had 90+% of the opportunities in Los Angeles this season. My only concern is in a full PPR format, we've seen the receiving usage really trail off since you've had Kupp and Puka back in this offense. And at the same time, if you are looking at Kyren Williams, this is a running back where you do have a tough matchup against the Bills. And again, while you typically would say, oh, the Rams are going to be so much of a better offense than what you have in Dallas, if you go and look at sportsbook projections this week, you have the Rams in Dallas projected to be different by about half a point. Obviously, this isn't going to be the case rest of season. Rest of season, I'd very easily rather have Kyren Williams, but it's just specifically for this week where you do have a much better matchup for Dallas in comparison to what you do with Cincy. So it's a tough spot. I do think it's up to you. If you looked at the flex rankings we put out early in the week, we had Kyren Williams higher than CeeDee Lamb. If you look at the live chat right now, they have Kyren Williams higher than CeeDee Lamb. But ultimately, I could see it swing in any direction. Stacy says, no second quarterback for my super flex spot. Are we going to fire up Rome or Whites? Ooh. So let's see the other options that we have here between Rome and White. We have Rashad White, Rome Odunze. We have no Tank Dills. Okay, these are your only two plays. Yeah, you're either looking at Rome Odunze or Rashad White. So for me, given the good matchup that you have, given the fact that also if you look at projections this week, sportsbooks do have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as the fourth highest scoring offense in the league. Off the top of my head, I believe Rashad White had 52% of the snaps last week against the Panthers. While obviously Buck Irving had 28 opportunities, Buck Irving is your RB1 in this backfield. Rashad White still does have a role. It is still a very good matchup. It should be a great offense. Rashad White's only had 2 targets over the past 2 weeks since the bye. I probably go with Rashad White over Rome Odunze, but it is a really tough spot. Both plays, I think you're just sending up a prayer to get the touchdown. Now, Filthy Flocker, happy to see you. Running back, we have Sincere to choose from. We have no Brian Robinson. We have no Dobbins. We have no Brees. What the hell am I supposed to tell you to do? I think you have to play Sincere McCoy. Do you play Sincere and Brooks? Wide receiver, for the love of God, tell me. I mean, flex, we have receivers, thank God. You go ahead and you play Evans and Lamb. Again, higher on Lamb this week than we were previously, given the fact that it's just the perfect matchup going up against Cincy. But this is the worst running back room that I've seen in quite some time, having to make a decision here this week. I'm sorry for you, my friend, but especially playing Jonathan Brooks in this matchup against Philly, just zero interest in doing that whatsoever. Okay, so let's move this over. These are all the questions that we have in the queue. Of course, if you wanted to get guaranteed answered any of your questions, you can over on flockfantasy.com. And once we get through, hopefully we can get through all these and we can get to some free questions in the live chat. I'm going to start answering these a little bit faster. We have less than an hour until kickoff. And also, I'm going to be keeping my eyes on the live chat. If we have any Ladd McConkey news, please let me know in the chat. Aiden says 6-7 must win with the second most points for. Nervous about Bucky. I wouldn't be nervous about Bucky. I think Bucky is good to go. I would go ahead and I'd play Bucky Irving. Again, you go through and look at the projections on Underdog. Last I checked, I think they had Bucky higher, lower, like 90.5 total yards. Bucky Irving, higher, lower, 91.5 total yards. You compare this to some of these other options, such as like Rico Dowdle. Dowdle, good matchup, but Dowdle, 91.5 total yards? Dear God. Bucky Irving, I just think is in a better offense, though. And again, I think you could see the volume go down for Dowdle in a game where they actually trail here against the Bengals. Wes, longtime member of the flock, says, hey, I had Malik as my third receiver. With his injury status, would you change it around? Half PPR and a flex. Half PPR, just getting the guaranteed targets of Neighbors matters a little bit less. But hell, it's not like the Bears or Titans offense is elite by any stretch of the imagination. So I'd still go with Malik Neighbors there. And then going down to the flex, for me, between Dowdle and Garindo, it's not a super easy call. I'd probably go ahead and I take Dowdle. It's a good matchup against Cincy, and we've already seen the workload before. Whereas if you are looking at Isaac Garindo, well, he definitely has the ceiling to take over the same way that Jordan Mason did. It's very much just a projection where we have not seen it, and the Niners offense is much worse than it previously was. So then you go Dowdle here in the flex. Now, in Ramsey coming through, says Ladd versus Dowdle versus Allen. Njoku versus Jonnu. Thanks, man. Thank you. Njoku and Jonnu, I have ranked back-to-back in my ranks this week. I do think that it's a good spot with no Tillman. Now for Njoku, obviously dominated targets a week ago. If you look at David Njoku on Underdog, do they not have an Njoku pick? Are you kidding me? I know we saw that they had a Jonnu at higher, lower, 49.5 receiving yards. Jonnu's crushed. Past 3 weeks, you've had over 100 receiving yards every week. I was thinking he's averaged 100 receiving yards over the past 3 weeks. I'm sorry, keep in mind, when we say these statistics, it's all off the dome, okay? We are working on a little laptop here. Can't really look things up. But I do think it's up to you. You do have better projections here for the Dolphins offense than you do with the Browns offense this week. With no Tillman, I probably go David Njoku, but I'm not going to fault you one way or another. And then looking at this, how I probably submit this starting lineup, if you need 2 running backs, I'm going to go with Achane, Charbonnet. Wide receiver, we go London, Judy. Tight end, you go Njoku. And then for the flex between Loud, Dowdle, and Braylon Allen, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take Rico. Actually, no, because you actually get the clarity with Ladd. If Ladd plays and they tell us he has no hesitation for tonight's game, you go Ladd McConkey, where if Ladd they're telling us he's going to be on snap count, he's going to be limited, then you pivot for Dowdle on Monday night. It's nice that you have Dowdle playing Monday, though, obviously, so we'll get the clarity on Ladd. DHD says, sending this again now that we have the handcuffs. Thanks. No, thank you, my friend. Let me hook you up with a free starts a question. I'm sorry that you had to send a question twice here. But looking at this, I for sure go Zach Charbonnet here over all these other running backs. Charbonnet is an easy play over Tracy and Braylon Allen for me this week. And then going down to the flex, it really comes down, are you going to go with Neighbors or are you going to go Braylon Allen? Full PPR format, I probably go with Malik Neighbors, just getting the guaranteed target volume. If you're worried that Malik Neighbors is going to be limited here with his injuries, and if you wanted to pivot from Neighbors to Braylon, I'm not going to fault you whatsoever to do so. But it is very, very much up to you there. Now, FSTNC. We need 2 running backs. Chase Brown is a locked and loaded starter. What are the projections with freaking Chase Brown this week? If you have Garindo and Dowdle like higher, lower, 91.5 total yards, Chase Brown better be over 100. Yeah. Chase Brown higher, lower, 104 total yards. For the love of God. Chase Brown, he was a tier 1 player in our rankings this week. Our second back, we have no Taylor, we have no Henry, so we're going to go Charbonnet over Dowdle and Garindo. I'm going down to wide receiver. We have no Sutton, you have no Pickens, you have no Collins. We're going to go with DJ Moore, and because we're going to end up having to play Devontae Adams in the flex. And then down here for the other flex spot, I think you probably end up going with Dowdle over Garindo. I think Garindo very easily could be a play for us next week. But here with how strong your team is, I think you can afford to wait a week and see exactly what the workload's going to look like. Now, John coming through with the start sit question. Here, running back, we have no Walker, we have no Taylor. I don't know who we have on the waiver wire. If you could run out there and pick up somebody like Charbonnet, it'd be an absolute no-brainer. Here for wide receiver, I would personally just play Malik Neighbors over Ladd McConkey, especially when we're dealing with these other injuries and these other bye weeks, because I don't want to be in the situation where we plan on going with Ladd tonight. He doesn't play, and then all of a sudden we're having to pivot over to Joshua Palmer. Obviously, if we knew Ladd McConkey was good to go, if they clear Ladd within the next 50 minutes, then you can go with Ladd over Neighbors, just because the offense is going to be much better, but we're just not going to get that clarity in time. John coming through the start set. Here, wide receiver. We have no Sutton. We have Neighbors banged up. I'd go Metcalf over him. Down in the flex, what running backs are we looking at? Najee. And then I would probably just go ahead and play Malik Neighbors in that second flex spot. If you wanted to pivot off of anybody here, you could pivot off of either Najee or Malik Neighbors for Jawan Jennings. Obviously has cemented himself as the top target in San Francisco. And at the same time, you have no CMC, you have no Ayuk. So the target should just be very concentrated here in comparison to what you're used to for the Niners. Now, a Hans coming through says, who should we flex? Charbonnet, Tracy, or Smith? Thank you. Thank you. For me, it's not close. You go with Zach Charbonnet. I really hope I'm wrong here. I really hope Devonta Smith dominates him. I'm starting Smith this week. I sadly don't have Charbonnet on my team, but I just think at the end of the day, Charbonnet, you get the guaranteed receiving work. You get the 3-down size. A running back that you just have to start. Now, Big Red Rob says, Brian Thomas Jr., David Njoku, Jake Ferguson must win to get in. I am going to go ahead. I will take Brian Thomas Jr. here. Obviously, I wish we had either Breece or Walker that we could play, or Terry McLaurin. Issue with Brian Thomas is you just absolutely hate the offense, but you also should see pretty much every target. You have no Gabe Davis. You have no Christian Kirk. So with that, I do think you get a very high floor with Brian Thomas in a full PPR format. Obviously, he's a big play receiver as well, so you only need one target to really break the slate. Now, Kyle coming through says, playing for the bye this week, picked up Johnny. Do we drop Pitts for depth, running back, handcuffs, wide receivers, playoff defenses? So the owner who had Pitts, which was Danny from Fantasy Stock Exchange in the Flock League, he dropped Pitts last Sunday. Let me see if anybody picked up Kyle Pitts when that happened. But I don't think anybody picked up Pitts. Yeah, Kyle Pitts is just available as a free agent. You played 41% of the snaps this past week against the Chargers. It's like higher lower 32.5 receiving yards. So if you're asking, like, who do we want on this list of options for rest of season? If you needed to play somebody this week, you play Elijah Moore. If you were looking to roster somebody rest of season here for upside, you would either pick the handcuff with Ray Davis, Tyler Algier, or a running back depth piece with Madison if you think Madison comes back and is healthy and takes over. But yeah, I think I would probably rather have one of the premium handcuff backs. But you could also just sit here with Kyle Pitts for one more week and you could see what you get. And maybe Kyle Pitts ends up coming away with the spike week. And maybe Jonnu goes back down to earth, because while Jonnu's been elite over the past month, it is a small sample. Average Joe says Walker's out. Otherwise, I would play him. So here, I think you have to play probably the combo of Rico Dowdle and Braylon Allen this week at running back. Wide receiver, you're going to go with A.J. Brown and London. And then down in the flex, I'm going to go with Lamb. So really the conversation would be centered around who are you benching between Isaac Garindo, Braylon Allen, and Rico Dowdle. That's the main thing we have to figure out here. The projections look very close with all running backs. My thought process is Garindo's a little bit more of a question mark, which I would have been willing to roll the dice and really shoot for the ceiling with Garindo early in the season when the Niners were an elite offense. However, that's not exactly the case at this point, so it is a little bit tougher to pencil Garindo in as a must-start option. I think next week, our tune may very well change. Next week, you probably play Garindo. But can everybody please spam the chat? Who do you bench here? Are you going to be benching Dowdle, Braylon Allen, or Isaac Garindo? Are you going to bench Dowdle, Braylon Allen, or Isaac Garindo? Okay, let's see what people have to say. Dowdle, Garindo, or Braylon Allen. We have Garindo, Allen, Dowdle, Garindo, Allen, Garindo, Allen, Dowdle, Allen. So it does look like it's split. We have Braylon Allen and Isaac Garindo ranked back-to-back. Obviously, both these guys are just massive question marks. We don't exactly know what to expect. Maybe we use... Are the projections... Okay. I'm sorry. I'm throwing in the towel. They're back-to-back in our ranks. I can't go over and look at Braylon Allen being projected higher, lower... 73.5 total yards, whereas Isaac Garindo has negative odds to score a touchdown. Higher, lower, 12.95 fantasy points. Do they have a fantasy points? Yeah, they have Braylon Allen down at 11.5, Garindo up at pretty much 13 fantasy points. So I'll throw in the towel. We'll put Garindo ahead of Braylon Allen this week in the ranks. Both as mid RB2s. Like Rio Dowdle's right here as well. I don't think it's an easy call. I think I could go back and forth 1,000 times here. Again, I'm not as excited about this Niners offense as you were earlier in the year based off the injuries to the offensive line, the injuries to CMC, as well as Brandon Ayuk. It's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out tonight. Yeah, I mean, you can say also the Jets offense is still much worse than what you have in San Francisco. Filthy Flocker coming through again. A wide receiver, we go Lamb over Harrison and Thomas. Down in the flex, I think you go Najee at running back. And then I think in the other flex spot, you're going to go with Dowdle as well. With Dowdle in a really good matchup. Najee, obviously, the Browns don't allow a ton of points to opposing running backs, but you actually do have the Steelers favored by about 6 points in this game. And you have no Pickens as well, so I actually think that you probably have the Steelers able to run the ball a bunch. Now, Air Max coming through says, messed up big playing Reed and Love and a must-win for me. Help me for the promised land, brother. Really appreciate you. And we are shooting for the stars here if we got the goose egg from Reed. And obviously, we had Love as a disappointing player. So we are going upside, upside, upside. You play Achane and Achane and Bucky at running back. Wide receiver, we go London and Tyreek. Tight end, Evan Ingram. And down in the flex, I think Dowdle gives you a higher floor, but because we need to shoot for the stars, right? And we're going to know a lot more information by the time you have to make this decision tonight. But if Ladd McConkey is cleared and they're telling us that Ladd's just going to be good to go with no hesitation, no limitations against the Kansas City Chiefs tonight, I think you could pivot off the safe option with Dowdle and go over to the ceiling play with Ladd. But obviously that's under the scenario in which you have, you have them not telling us, oh, Ladd's playing, but he's going to be on snap count. And in that instance, you just go ahead and you take Dowdle because, you saw Najee Harris have the best game of his season this past week against the Bengals. The Bengals do objectively have the worst defense in the league. Now, Uncle Dud TV says, Garindo or Brian Thomas Jr. in the flex. I'm going to go with Isaac Garindo. I'll take the 3-down running back over the receiver. That's just in a garbage offense. Ark says, quarterback and running back help. Bucky and Dobbins hurt us. I think Bucky's playing, no? If Bucky's not playing, I got to make some changes. Quarterback, I'm going to go Aiden O'Connell over Bryce Young. I think Bryce Young is a better future NFL quarterback Bryce Young's looked pretty damn good as of late as well. But the issue that you have with Young is it's a horrible matchup going up against Philly. They project to be the worst offense in the league. Aiden O'Connell this week, according to sportsbooks, Aiden O'Connell's in a great matchup against the Bucks. Oh, Bucky screws you because he takes over for Rachaad White. I still go with Rachaad White. He had 52% of the snaps. And then down in the flex, Amari and Thielen. Not exciting. I would love to get off of them. Sincere, you could potentially pivot to, but full PBR format, you probably start the receivers and close your eyes. Now, Guzman coming through, and here real quick, you know what I can actually do? I forgot, since we're on the laptop, we don't have this chat popped out. I can hide the bots. So let me hide some of these bots in the chat for y'all real quick. And also, please, if you have not done so already, hit the like button. I mean, we live stream every single day. Sunday morning streams are by far and away the most important for us, though. So if you're ever going to hit the like button, I would beg like a little child that you please do it for us this fine Sunday morning. So yeah, please, if you have not hit that like button yet, don't know what you're waiting for, fix your life. Now, Guzman coming out says Kittle, Jennings, Charbonnet, or Grindo for the flex. You go with Charbonnet. Yeah, wide receiver, play Puka, Myers. Tight end, go Bowers. Running back, you're going to go James Cook, Jahmyr Gibbs. Quarterback, you go Jalen Hurts. And then down in the flex, you go with Zach Charbonnet. Obviously, really like Kittle. Kittle is arguably tight end 3 here in fantasy, but give me the running back that will have every single touch in his backfield, including the targets as well. And it's not like I think Charbonnet is some bum, undrafted free agent coming in that just projects to see volume, so you have to start him. For me, how I view it, I think Charbonnet is a talented running back. I think Charbonnet is a talented running back that will also get volume. Elias coming out with the start set. Here, we're looking at the flex. We have no Olave, so it's really just Pacheco versus the receivers in Waddle and Devonta Smith. It's saying it's a non-PPR format. If it is a non-PPR league, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take Isaiah Pacheco relatively easily. I still probably go Pacheco regardless. I would be slightly interested in Devonta Smith here, given the fact that you do have no Dallas Goedert, but I think Pacheco probably expands his role a bit this week. Now, Cameron Trent is thinking about starting 2 tight ends with this lineup. So running back, obviously we're getting Chase Brown, Achane both in. It's a great team. Wide receiver, we're going to go with Mike Evans, and I'd play Tyreek over Harrison. Down in the tight end slot, I'm going to go with David Njoku. For me, I would not play Jonnu Smith. I completely understand Jonnu's average 100 receiving yards over the past 3 weeks. Jonnu's been phenomenal. I would go with Pollard as a running back that's a heavy favorite with the 3-down workload and a great matchup. And I would go with Harrison as well as the elite wide receiver prospect that's coming off the game where he sees the most targets in his NFL career. So it's not the easiest decision. Clearly, Jonnu's been so much better than these other 2 players. But I still think you probably end up going with, and I know everybody's going to say that we're stupid here. I'll show you the projections on Underdog. They currently have Jonnu Smith higher, lower, 49.5 receiving yards. They have Harrison higher, lower, 53.5 receiving yards, more likely to score the touchdown. And they have Pollard higher, lower, 88.5 total yards. Like, Jonnu is a top 5 tight end in my rankings this week. He is back-to-back with David Njoku. If you wanted to play him over Njoku, I'm not going to fault you for it whatsoever. I just don't think I can play both tight ends. Bibb says, I need to win. It's a must win. Who should we go with? I'm going to hook you up with a free start sit question, my friend. Really hope that you can send something in next week. Hopefully we end up winning this matchup here. I'm going over and looking at our options for the love of God, you can find a better tight end streamer. You can find a better tight end streamer. Do they have a pick out for Grant? Grant Calcaterra is higher, lower, 24.5 receiving. You do not start this dude. Find a better tight end option. And then down there in the flex, honestly, I have DK Metcalf ranked higher than Garindo. I'm starting to not feel great about that. I'm starting to feel like we maybe need to change that around, if I'm going to be honest. Full PPR format, I think we probably go with the guy that we've seen the usage from for years now. He had 9 targets last week. Seems to be healthy now, hopefully. I'm also very biased. I'm starting DK Metcalf with my own team. I'm really sending up a prayer that Metcalf can get there for us. But, yeah, with Garindo, you have the ceiling, but the offense is worse than it was previously, and we just don't know 100% sure that the role is going to be there. Naran coming out says, hello, Mr. Team of Destiny. Hello, my friend. I'm 6-7 and need to win this game. Who should we start? Help me. Okay. Must-win spot here. And we have a pretty damn good team. We have a Bucky going through and breaking out. We have Achane, obviously, as a top 3 running back at this point. We have a phenomenal team here. This is a 10-team league. We have Jefferson, Kupp, London as the easy wide receiver starts. Tight end, we have Disley with no Kincaid playing this week. And then down in the flex, it all comes down to, are you starting Neighbors, Garindo, or Dowdle? Because your team is so strong, I don't think you have to roll the dice with Neighbors just in case that Neighbors is limited in any capacity. I think you just play it safe. I think you go ahead and you take Rico Dowdle. I mean, with Dowdle, you know you're going to have the role. Not only you're going to have the role, but it's also a phenomenal matchup going up against the Cincinnati Bengals. So I think you probably go ahead and you probably take Dowdle here for the flex. Now, going down to our next question from Treybone. Says, must-win week against a stout opponent. So if you're looking at my rankings this week, between Metcalf and Neighbors, I do have Metcalf as the better option, with Neighbors potentially being limited here. Obviously, if Neighbors was 100%, I think you have just a safer target floor with Malik Neighbors, especially in a full PPR format where you just are pretty much guaranteed to have all the targets, to have the receptions. But I'd probably go Metcalf over him. Metcalf did have 9 targets a week ago. Now, JDBE says, need help with my flex spots. Worthy, Hawkinson, and Thielen. I'd rather not flex the tight end if we could avoid it. I don't know if you can avoid it, though. Hawkinson, higher, lower, 40.5 total yards. Worthy's 44.5. Less likely to get the touchdown. Adam Thielen's 44.5. Super unlikely to score the TD. And I'll say this as somebody who drafted a decent amount of Adam Thielen in underdog drafts. Like, I hope I'm wrong. I hope that Adam Thielen comes out and crushes. The issue, again, is if you look at what sportsbooks are projecting, the Panthers project to be the worst offense in the NFL this week. Bryce Young's been good over the past 2 weeks, but this is an ultimate trap spot for the Panthers, for Bryce Young. Do not get suckered into playing these guys. And honestly, I'll stand by that. I think you go Hawkinson and Worthy. If I can avoid playing Adam Thielen, I want to do it. It's not a super easy call because it's not like Hawkinson or Worthy are super exciting in their own right. But Adam Thielen's not dominating targets in Carolina. He is more so a part-time. I mean, he's not a part-time receiver, but it's not a situation like Malik Neighbors where he's an elite talent that's just going to see 35% of the team's targets when healthy in a garbage offense. No. He's probably going to see about a 20 to 23% team target share in the worst offense in the league, which that's not something I'm interested in. Lord's Child says, Neighbors' health concerns me. Who should we flex? If you're super concerned about Neighbors' injury, I think you can go ahead and you can take Isaac Garindo. If you think Neighbors is going to be 100% without limitations in a full BBR format, in that instance, I think you could go ahead and take Neighbors and just get the guaranteed receptions. But yeah, if you're personally worried about the Malik Neighbors injury, potentially limiting him here, then no harm, no foul. I think you can play Isaac Garindo instead. Grindo still definitely a projection. Like, we can't say for 100% certainty that we know exactly what we're looking at. Now, Cobra Kyron coming out says must win week. If you look at my rankings, we have Adams ahead of Neighbors, but again, it's really just given the injury and thinking that you potentially have Neighbors limited a bit here. And going down to the flex, you still play Kyron Williams. I'm definitely concerned about what you have with Kyron centering around the drop of receiving usage that we have had in Los Angeles. Since you've had Kupp and Puka back in, they're using Kyron a lot less as a receiver. And at the same time, with Kyron Williams here, you have seen them skew much more pass happy at the goal line in comparison to what you're typically used to seeing early in the season here. So let's go ahead and let's refresh this. Okay. These are the questions that we have in the queue on flockfantasy.com. Obviously, we'll get to all these questions. Hopefully we can get to them and have enough time to get to some more of the free questions in the chat, though. Mark, really appreciate you, my guy. Let me hook you up with a free start sit question for next week. Says, must win for the playoffs, lose and I'm out. High upside, Pickens out, wide receiver on the waiver wires, Rome, Pearsall, or Trey Tucker. We're not going to go with Ricky Sticky. Really hope I'm wrong, but it would be a horrible play. And then Trey Tucker, no way we can go with either. Aiden O'Connell versus Russ. I understand where you're coming from with O'Connell having a great matchup. I still probably go with Russell Wilson here. I'm going over to what we have at running back. I just think you probably have to go ahead and you play Charbonnet and Nick Chubb. Not excited about playing Nick Chubb whatsoever. I am very excited about playing Sharps. And then over at wide receiver, I would go with Rome Odunze. I mean, obviously, we've had some progression here in this passing offense in Chicago. I'm a little bit worried that the passing volume actually does regress a bit. And it's tough to know exactly what to expect with the change with the coaching staff here. You did have Trey Tucker early in the season as a decent little option that you could look at. But you have Myers, Bowers dominating targets. And while it's a good matchup, it's freaking Trey Tucker. I'm so terrible at fantasy coming out again. Says Caleb or Purdy. Worried about San Francisco, and Caleb looks okay. I would go with Purdy over Caleb. You do have the Niners as 3.5, 4-point favorites in this game. And at the same time, I do think with the change in coaching staff, there's an outside chance that you do see the passing volume fall a bit and they are a little bit more balanced. JSX coming through with the start sit question. Here we are looking at a couple wide receivers. It's a dynasty league, so we're going to have a bunch of players to look at. And main guys that would be interesting would be Keenan Allen. I guess we have DeMarcus Robinson, Trey Tucker, Parker Washington. Here's where I guess you go Trey Tucker and you send up a prayer and say, oh, okay, well, it's a good matchup at the very least. We're going to go with Rachaad White in the flex, 52% of the snaps this past week. Obviously, he is getting absolutely taken over from with Bucky, but it's a good matchup, and you do still have the snaps. And then I think we probably go with Sincere McCormick down in the second flex spot. I really don't want to play him, but if you're comparing him to like other backup running backs like Devin Singletary, then sure, you can roll the dice. Now, Ricky coming out with a massive dono, my guy. Really appreciate you. Let me hook you up with a free start sit question for next week, too. This is can't decide between a limited Neighbors and I think a potentially banged up Metcalf. First year playing fantasy football. Thanks for all the help so far. No, thank you so much, my guy. So DK Metcalf obviously didn't practice all week until Friday with the shoulder. But he's not on the injury report whatsoever. So I don't think I would be much more concerned with the injury that you have to Malik Neighbors than the injury with DK Metcalf. So we're just streaming Jameis in place of Lamar. A running back, we are going with Jalen Warren with Taylor on bye. I mean, a fine streaming option. And I guess for me, I would go with Malik Neighbors. Actually, no, you got to go DK Metcalf. Metcalf would get the 9 targets last week. If Neighbors was fully healthy, I think you go with Neighbors, but the reports are saying that Neighbors could be limited in this game. It would be like a massive controversy if that ended up happening with DK, considering the fact that they've taken him completely off the injury report. So I think Metcalf plays his usual 85, 90% of the snaps here in Seattle. And I can't say the same with the Neighbors. Obviously, the Seahawks offense is a better offense. Neighbors, when healthy, should have a much higher percentage of his team's targets here. It is just tougher to project out. Now, JC Giat coming out with the start set question. Here, running back, we are going to go ahead. We are just going to be plugging in Kyron Williams, even though the receiving involvement has come down in Los Angeles. In the other running back slot, I think you probably end up going with Aaron Jones, where you do have the Vikings as about 5-point favorites. Can I see what the Aaron Jones projections are? Aaron Jones, higher, lower, 82.5 total yards, more likely than not to get a touchdown. You have the Vikings as about 5-point favorites. Obviously, Aaron Jones will have the receiving workload, and you can see a touchdown in this game. Wide receiver, I'm going to go with Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams, just knowing it's a super concentrated offense here as well. Now, MN Feek says the limited Neighbors or MVS, Sladen, or Edwards. Thanks. Thank you. And 100% you're going to go with Malik Neighbors here. Not even like Malik Neighbors versus DK Metcalf. It's like, oh, okay. Malik Neighbors may be limited. So yeah, let's go ahead and let's just go DK. But you can't move Neighbors down to like, oh, okay. Now you're picking up somebody off the waiver wire to play him. Like looking at where I have Malik Neighbors in our wide receiver ranks this week, I have Malik Neighbors at wide receiver 18. Like, obviously, when fully healthy, he is just going to see a ridiculous, and I mean a ridiculous 30+% team target share. And I say this as somebody who doesn't have much Malik Neighbors. Like, I really hope I'm wrong here. But you lower that expectations this week, but you still play him over waiver wire options. Now, Mavium coming out says, full PPR, Pacheco, Charbonnet, or Garindo. I would go with Charbonnet here. Would have to drop one of the other two for Sharps. If that's the case, obviously Charbonnet is probably only a 1-week fill-in. I think Charbonnet Garindo is maybe close enough where you just play Isaac Garindo. In a vacuum, I definitely prefer Charbonnet for this week. But the issue is Garindo and Pacheco will be much better long-term options given the injuries that you have to CMC and Jordan Mason. Whereas if you're looking at Kenneth Walker could potentially be back next week, or at least that's what we're being told now. Now, Jared says Calvin Austin, MVS, Wandale, or Trey Tucker. This is an interesting question. I actually probably go Adam Thielen over these guys. You know, I'm not super excited to play Adam Thielen. We've already talked about the really strong hesitations we have with this Carolina Panthers offense this week. If you couldn't play Thielen and instead you had to pivot over to somebody else, Calvin Austin's not the worst play in the world with no Pickens. But I'd actually probably go with MVS, where you do have the Saints projecting out to be a pretty decent offense. And obviously, you really just don't have anybody here post Kamara and Taysom injuries. Now, my digs coming out says Rome or Quentin Johnston and Amir or Sincere. For me, I would go ahead and I would take Rome over Johnston. I really hope that Quentin Johnston outscores Rome based off how many underdog drafts I have Johnston in. But it's a tough matchup where the Chargers offense projects out pretty poorly regardless. If you knew for a fact, hey, you have no Ladd McConkey, then at that point, I think Rome becomes a lot more interesting. And then looking at Amir versus Sincere. Can we look at what the projections are on under? I know everybody wants to get Sincere in here. Do they have projections out on him? Sincere McCormick, they have higher, lower, 46.5 rushing yards. They don't have the receiving, and higher, lower, 6.5 receiving yards. So let me see something. Which is hilarious. Real quick, if you're ever going to look at any underdog picks, like, make sure you're looking at them all, because say you would want to go like, oh, Sincere, he's not going to hit 6. He's not going to hit 7 receiving yards. I'm going to go with a lower 6.5. You can go and see he also has higher, lower 6.5 for his longest reception. So you'd just be way better off going with the lower 6.5 longest reception than just straight up receiving yards. But if you cross-reference this with Amir is higher, lower, 43.5 total yards. You're going to assume that Amir Abdullah has more receiving involvement. Sincere's more likely to get the touchdown. I think you probably go Rome and Sincere here. I think you go Rome and Sincere. But between the Raiders' backs, I really don't know. Now, Kwakia Lewis, I apologize that I can't read. Need 2 receivers, 2 running backs, and a flex. Full PPR. Bucky, super easy play, given the matchup that you have. Wide receiver, we're going to go with Judy with no Tillman, concentrated targets at the top. Charbonnet, stud running back, 3-down workload, decent offense, and no competition whatsoever in his backfield. So, definitely play Charbonnet, Bucky, and Jerry Judy out of those options. Now, Stuke coming out says, need a tight end and a flex. We also have Sincere. We're going to go Kelsey over Njoku. And then down for the flex, I'm going to go with Jalen Waddle. Don't love it. I mean, I definitely think the Browns options are interesting, especially as you have no Cedric Tillman here. So the target volume should be a little bit more concentrated between the guys like Judy, Elijah Moore, and David Njoku. So I'm not saying it's an easy call by any means. But Nicholas says 2-week fantasy playoffs, dynasty league where we need to make up 28 points to come back. We need some upside. Okay. So Charbonnet and Garindo are the plays here at running back for chasing upside with very little competition in their own backfields. And then a receiver between JSN and Garrett Wilson. We have them ranked relatively close this week at 12 and 16 respectively. I actually probably go Garrett Wilson. I know people are going to hate it. Obviously, JSN's been so much better than Wilson over the past 3 weeks, but you have the large sample. JSN only had 4 targets this past week. In New York, everything is super, super concentrated at the very top in terms of the targets that you have. So I probably go ahead. I probably take Garrett Wilson over JSN, but I can almost guarantee you if I ask that question in the live chat, most people would go with Wilson. With JSN. But for sure, play those running backs. Wide receivers, it's up to you, though. FF King coming out. We're really choosing between Pacheco and Tracy or DK Metcalf. Honestly, F it. I go DK Metcalf here. Like Tracy, the volume hasn't been there over the past 2 weeks. Garbage offense. Pacheco, tough matchup. We can't be certain of what the workload looks like. Metcalf obviously is yet again outproduced by JSN this past week, but Metcalf had 9 targets compared to JSN at 4. You've seen the large, sample with Metcalf at the same time. So I think you go ahead. I think you take Metcalf here. Now, Dustin says, hey, Mason, try to clinch a bye. We need some help. Tight end, I'm going to go Hawkinson over Evan Ingram. Here it's like very different. Hawkinson's going to see a much lower target share in his respective offense, but he's going to just be in a much, much better offense with higher, more points scored, higher probability to score a touchdown. Going over to what we have with the flex, we have no Nico, we have no Walker. I think we have no Brees. I think you end up going with the running back here. Between Braylon Allen and Rico Dowdle, they are going to be extremely close for me. I probably end up going with Dowdle because this week in particular, with the way that the matchups line up, you actually should have a much better offense in Dallas than we will for the Jets. Okay, so these are the only questions that we have left on the sites. These 3 are in the queue. We're going to get to the team review on Monday, like we said. But so, of course, if you wanted to get a guaranteed answer on this live stream, go over to flockfantasy.com, hit the personalized advice button. Then you can go ahead and you can ask any question you want. Or also, after we answer these 3, we're going to be bouncing over and answering a bunch of the questions in the live chat as well. So if you have any questions, please drop a like on this live stream, as well as just ask a question in the chat, whatever you want. Now, CBH coming out says, need a win. Also have Disley. We like Keenan's upside. Well, we got Puka, A.J. Brown as guys you have to start over Keenan. Tight end, I think Juwan Johnson's actually interesting here. Now that you have no Taysom, and the offense actually does project out to be decent here in this environment. Juwan Johnson is higher or lower 33.5 receiving yards. Kyle Pitts is higher or lower 30.5 receiving yards. So Underdog agrees with us to go Jawan here. God dang, I'm in a hotel and something's going on outside. I have no idea what that is. But anyway, for the flex, for me, I would go Neighbors. I understand that Keenan's actually had 20-plus fantasy points over the past 2 weeks. And at the same time, you potentially have to be concerned about Neighbors being limited in this. But at the end of the day, Neighbors is leading the NFL effectively in targets per game. The target share should be really high in any game that he is healthy. Obviously, to the extent that he's going to miss this week is something that I can't answer. If you're really concerned about what you're going to have with Malik Neighbors' ability to play, I wouldn't fault you at all if you wanted to pivot away. But I don't know. In a vacuum, I definitely prefer Neighbors over Keenan. As with Keenan, you also have a considerable amount of targets, of course, going in the direction of DJ Moore. Rome Odunze is still there, where we have seen these random one-off games where Rome actually takes a lot. So for me, I would go Neighbors over Keenan Allen. Now, Lobo says, Keenan and Trey Tucker also available. Appreciate you, my friend. I'd definitely go Keenan before Trey Tucker. But for the flex, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take Neighbors. I would also actually go with Devonta Smith here instead of those waiver wire wide receivers. Where if you were in a spot where you're super concerned about Malik Neighbors possibly being limited in this game, which I'll say, I'm hoping that Neighbors doesn't really perform. I didn't draft this dude at all this season, primarily because of concerns with the offense. But I think Devonta Smith will be an elite offense. The issue, of course, is he is in an offense that's going to run the ball consistently. Now, Shane coming out with this start sit question. Running back, we go ahead and we play Zach Charbonnet relatively easily. I'd like to get in Garindo as well, but we have Kamara. I'm going to be going with Jared Judy at wide receiver with no Tillman. And then down here for the flex, I think you go ahead and you take Isaac Garindo. And set up a prayer that this Niners offense is better than what it was a week ago. Let's refresh. We have no more questions on the site to get to right now. So let me go ahead and instead pivot over and answer some of these questions that we have in the live chat. But please, if you have any questions in the chat, go ahead and drop them. I'd be happy to answer as many as I possibly can. And dear God, my throat's giving out. It's crazy. Like this time of year, it's like, doing a 2-3 hour stream feels like a lot, even though back in September, October, and half of November, it's like we're live streaming for 5 hours every single day. It's like, I can't even imagine. I have no idea how. YouTube Dad Boy says Purdy or Tua. I'd probably go ahead. I'd probably just play it safe and take what you have with Tua this week. I mean, you have seen Tua over a larger sample now, and at the same time with Tua, this is a really high projection for the Dolphins offense to be a top 5 scoring offense in the league this week. So, I don't know. I think you can go ahead. I think you can play Tua. The Sauce says, I got to start Braylon Allen or Garindo. What's the official word? Do we sit Pollard and start both? I would go Pollard. With Pollard, obviously not super excited about him most weeks where you do have Tajay Spears. This week, though, it's just like the only game you're ever going to see the Tennessee Titans favored by like 5+ points. If you look at my rankings this week, I have Pollard, Garindo, and Braylon Allen ranked all back to back to back. I am going to be benching Braylon Allen out of the trio. Earlier in the live stream, we've had Garindo and Braylon Allen ranked back to back for a while now. Earlier in the stream, we were saying to go through and just play Braylon Allen instead of Garindo. I think 100% it was the wrong call. I think you have to go with Garindo if you look at the projections that you have for the two respective offenses. Obviously, the Niners offense isn't what we thought it was going to be at the beginning of the season, but you can say the same thing to a greater extent with the Jets, where the Jets are even in a worse offense where it would be extremely difficult to get excited about them. Now, let's move this over to our next question. Tron says, Tracy or Braylon Allen? And also hope to see more great features added to flockfantasy.com for next year. Oh, 100%. What I'm going to do this offseason, I know a lot of people are probably going to be upset with this, is y'all know in the past, I've uploaded Dynasty videos every single day through the entire offseason. I am probably not going to be doing that this year. I'll probably upload like one Dynasty video a week on the Dynasty channel. And instead, I'm going to be working as much as I can to bring as many cool features to flockfantasy.com for y'all as possible, which already super proud of what we were able to do with the site this year. Because I know what we've talked about this a bunch, but I am just really proud of it. Like, because in the past when we would do the super chat live Q&As, it's like, okay, somebody has to come in and donate during the live stream, wait around for an hour 15 for their question to get answered. And if they had to leave for whatever reason, they just didn't get to see the answer to their question. Where now it's like built out where the answer to the question gets sent directly to them. So it's like you can leave whenever you need and you can have a life. You know, I'm not going to hold you hostage in a live stream for an hour and a half. And I don't have to worry about you having to take your kid to baseball, missing the question. And then I'm just an ass for not doing a good enough job for you. But since it's on the site, it's like, hey, it can get sent to you as soon as it's answered. You don't even have to be in the stream to see it. And at the same time, I can just see so much more information so I can give you a much better answer. So I'm really proud of what we were able to do with flockfantasy.com. And I'm hoping, again, that next year it is a lot better than it was this one as well. But I am personally going to go ahead. I'm going to take Braylon Allen over Tyrone Tracy. I'm not super excited about Tracy. If you look at the workload over the past 2 weeks, you actually have had a considerable amount of work being stolen specifically from Singletary, and it's a garbage offense, so I don't necessarily feel the need you have to get him in. Zach says Spears or Bigsby. I'm going to go with Spears, better offense, and a larger receiving role. Hope I'm wrong. I have a lot of Tank Bigsby in underdog drafts, but I think it'd be almost impossible to start Bigsby at this point. Let's see. We got Balenci says Neighbors or Jawan Jennings. I'm going to go with Malik Neighbors, but depending on the health of Neighbors, that 100% could be the wrong call, and I could be setting you up for disaster on that, my friend. Let's see. M. Shaw says Darnold or Baker. I'm going to go with Baker. You do have the Bucks projected out as the 4th highest scoring offense in the league this week. And with Baker, you do have Mike Evans back in for him. So I think you're in a better spot than you would be otherwise. Okay. Diswarren says Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts. Both plays are phenomenal. I'd probably go ahead and take Jalen Hurts and hope that you get the rushing touchdowns. I can't believe you have both quarterbacks on your same team, though. But real quick, I see a message coming through on the site from Big Route. It says, Nick Westbrook, Akine, or Deebo Samuel, full PBR format. Reed killed me. Really appreciate you as always, my friend, but I'm going to say what I know you don't want to hear. I'm going to say what I know nobody wants to hear. I'm going with Deebo Samuel here. Nick Westbrook Akine has been phenomenal. Nobody can deny it. But let's take a step backwards and let's look at why he has been so good. Is it because this is a receiver that has all of a sudden turned the corner and he's seen a bunch of volume since DeAndre Hopkins has left? Or the Tennessee Titans offense is now all of a sudden a great offense? No, neither things are true. You look at this, why he has been a great option, and by quote unquote great option, he's had one game with more than 20 fantasy points scored. He is running insane with his touchdown rate, which cannot keep up, especially in an offense like this. You look at Nick Westbrook-Akine, since the bye, a touchdown off of 2 targets, a touchdown off of 4 targets, a touchdown off of 4 targets, a touchdown off of 6 targets, no touchdown off of 3 targets, a touchdown off of 6 targets, a touchdown off of 5 targets, 2 touchdowns off of 8 targets. This is the most unsustainable production that you could ever imagine. It would be very different if it's like, oh, he's playing with Mahomes. It's going to be an efficient offense. Touchdowns will continue to be there. But no, it's a bad offense. It's good. It's a decent spot this week because they get to go up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. But ultimately, you don't want to be starting a receiver that's averaging 5 targets a game from Will Levis. And it also maybe be different if, oh, he's a rookie. He's going to continue to expand his role. Typically, you see rookie breakouts, the efficiency comes and then volume follows. So even if the efficiency falls, if you get the bump in volume, then cool. It doesn't matter. But the dude's 27 years old. There is nothing clear in fantasy football, and very rarely can you say this. Very rarely can I make these big statements. Most of the time it's, oh, I'm an idiot. Don't trust me. Let's ask the chat. That's what I say 99% of the time because it's the truth. I'm an idiot. I know it. I get things wrong all the time. You know it. But very rarely do we see one of these clear spots where it's like, oh, everybody's on this guy. Clearly, you look at the profile. This isn't someone you want to be betting on. Now, of course, Chris says any given Sunday. Any given Sunday, this dude could come out. He could have another 2 receiving touchdowns off of 8 targets against the Jacksonville Jaguars. That's a possibility. But is that a good bet? No, I don't think so. Again, it's a 27-year-old receiver, the second option on his team in targets, and a bad offense. He's had 1 game this season with more than 20 fantasy points or 20 fantasy points or more. So I don't want anything to do with it. So I would go Deebo Samuel. I know Deebo's been much worse, but I have more faith in the offense. We have a larger sample with the player. You have no CMC. You have no Ayuk. Maybe they get him involved a little bit more. I can't sit here and act like I'm super excited about playing Deebo, though. Okay, so let's move this over and get to our next question. We got Tyler saying Calvin Austin or Rome Odunze. Honestly, up to you. I really don't want to tell anybody to play Calvin Austin, but if you're desperate with no pickings, I'm not going to fault you for it. YouTube Dat Boy says Amir Abdullah or Jonathan Brooks. Amir gets return yards in my league. If Amir gets return yards, then you go Amir Abdullah. Like Jonathan Brooks, I don't think you're excited to start him at all. Jonathan Brooks is a committee running back in what projects to be the league's worst offense this week. So, yeah, I'd avoid Brooks if we can. Zach says Neighbors or Garrett Wilson. I don't think you have to roll the dice with Neighbors being banged up here. I think you just go ahead and play it safe with Wilson. Creme de la Pants says Charbonnet is the answer to all your questions. Yes. Let me get out some pretty big statements right now because obviously the players that people are asking most about are Braylon Allen and Zach Charbonnet. First things first, if you have Zach Charbonnet, he's in your starting lineup. Zero hesitation. It's not a bad offense. I don't want to say it's great offense, but it's not a bad one. Charbonnet is going to be the only running back to touch the football in this offense. And again, this isn't a Sincere McCormick situation where you go, hey, I'm pretty sure this dude's a bum, but he's going to get volume. He has a decent matchup. He's in a whatever spot. So it's like, oh, okay, you're going to get volume in fantasy. Maybe you're viable. No, Charbonnet's great. Charbonnet was great at UCLA. The size to be a 3-down running back. The receiving skill set. And he goes to the NFL, gets drafted in round 2. Now, of course, the efficiency hasn't been phenomenal. But in terms of looking at the typical quality of a running back that you get as a spot start when the starter's down ahead of him, like Charbonnet's a better running back than Isaac Rindo, talent-wise. Even if the efficiency hasn't necessarily been there. So Charbonnet is a very easy play. 3-down bell cow, decent offense, receiving skill set. I'm not going to say he is one of the best starting running backs in the league by any means. Of course not. You look at the efficiency, it's not there. But if you compare him to other spot start guys like Isaac Rindo, undrafted free agents that were RB3s on their depth chart, I'm going to go with Zach Charbonnet over them. And then if you're looking at like Braylon Allen, I think it's a decent back in a tough spot where his just offense is really bad. They are heavy dogs in this game. But for the love of God, if you have Charbonnet, you play Charbonnet. Braylon Allen, solid RB2. Garindo, solid RB2. Wide range of outcomes. Garindo could end up being a high-end RB1. We'll see. But Charbonnet is just a locked and loaded, low-end RB1, high-end RB2. Zero hesitation. Super high floor. Hogan says, if McConkey's out, do we start Tolbert as the pivots? Yeah, you got to roll the dice that Ladd plays here if these are your options. And I would rather pivot to Joshua Palmer or Quentin Johnston if either on your waiver wire than Tolbert. But if Tolbert's your only option, my guy. Then you could also, especially now that Brandon Cooks is going to go, like I have no interest. I think I would almost rather pivot over to Yoshi Bosch too on Monday night if you had to. But it looks like we are about to get kickoff. Let me quadruple check my own lineup this week. This is the most important week in the Flock League. I need this standby. Who we have at the noon slate is I have Najee. I don't have many players playing on the noon slate. I have Najee and Devonta Smith going. And that's it. And everybody else goes later in the day. And then I'm benching Jalen Waddle this week for DeAndre Swift. Swift should be good to go. Come on, Swift. Come through for us, buddy. Come through for us. But good luck, ladies and gentlemen. I really, really do appreciate you. And I really hope we get to see you out in the live stream.